Good evening, everyone. Before we open this meeting of Planning and Development, I would like to, as we gather, respectfully acknowledge on behalf of Council and the community that the City of Pembroke resides on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. It is with this statement that we honor and respect the Algonquins on whose land we reside. I'll call this meeting of the Planning and Development Committee to order. And Happy New Year, Your Worship, members of Council. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and nature thereof? Seeing none, I need an approval of the meeting agenda. Moved by Councillor Fernier, seconded by Councillor Plummer. No additions, corrections, amendments? Those in favor? Carried, thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, I will turn this part over to His Worship. I know that he would like to introduce some special guests we have with us this evening. Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to introduce Sabine Mersman and Dr. Johnson to Council Chambers this afternoon and to all the ratepayers that follow us on YouTube as well as those that are present today. Ms. Mersman is the newly appointed President and CEO of the Pembroke Regional Hospital, having been appointed on November 1st. She has a wealth of experience, having served in a variety of roles at the PRH for more than 2 decades. Ms. Mersman has a varied professional skill set ranging from HR, financial management, risk management, program management, and the list just simply continues. She has been leading physician recruitment for several years now, and prior to her roles at the PRH, she has an impressive list of accomplishments and certainly an amazing professional. Equally impressive this evening is the lead physician for the Pembroke Family Medicine Teaching Unit, Dr. Richard Johnson. He co-chairs the Brantford County Primary Care Network, is the Chief of Family Medicine for the Pembroke Regional Hospital, and the clinical lead for Ottawa Valley Ontario Health Team. Dr. Johnson has engaged and leads a group of physicians who actively direct family medicine recruitment for Brantford County. It's my pleasure to introduce the two of them this afternoon. There was a recent meeting with Ms. Mersman as well as our CAO, Mr. Unraw. We had a great conversation, and it was felt that the best opportunity would be to bring these two outstanding individuals to Council so that we could have a discussion. So welcome to the two of you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you so much, Worship Mayor Gervais and councillors, and thank you so much for inviting Dr. Johnson and I here tonight to come and talk about primary care recruitment. I know this is a subject that's at the on the mind of many residents, not only in Pembroke, but Renfrew County and likely Ontario and Canada, because of a huge shortage of primary care physicians. And we want to let you know what we have been doing over the last few years and what the current state of affairs is. Next slide, please. So, Dr. Johnson and I have been, over the many years that we have been working on physician recruitment, developed a vision, not only the two of us, but with many other people who are involved with physician recruitment, many physicians. And the two pieces of that vision are that we, certainly our goal is to attach every patient to primary care who would like to be attached to primary care. We have to remember that 100% is likely not the right goal, because some people just simply are not looking for primary care physicians or attachment that way. But that's one piece of our vision. The other piece of our vision, and I think this is very important to remember, is like we are not about recruiting a physician to one particular area of Renfrew County. We believe the problem is all over the county, and wherever a physician is interested in practicing, we should be making that possible and ensure that that physician stays at least within the county, not necessarily within Pembroke, not necessarily within Deep River or Barry's Bay or Renfrew. And we have really made that our mission to talk to many healthcare professionals and physicians to say, come along with us in that vision. And if a physician is interested in very rural medicine, and we have those opportunities in Barry's Bay and Deep River, then that's also great for all of us that those patients up there have a physician. There is, though, a huge problem. We have a tremendous lack of physicians provincially, nationally, and internationally. And of course, as always, we are competing against large urban centers. And I'm sure that's not only for physicians, that's for every professional that we try to attract to Renfrew County. And so I think fundamentally, we do believe that this has become really significantly more difficult now with a much bigger lack of physicians in the last couple of years than it ever has been. So our current data, Dr. Johnson has done a lot of work with the primary care physicians in Renfrew County, and we know that approximately 20% of our patients are not attached either to a family physician or nurse practitioner, which counts to about 20,000 people, more or less. Provincially, we are definitely above the provincial average. So provincially, the average is around 10 to 12%, likely a little bit less in the GTA, and the more rural you go, likely the attachment is more complicated. Also, for Pembroke specifically, we have had a very difficult year. Dr. Baxter retiring and Dr. Hing retiring. These were two physicians with tremendously large practices, and really has been very challenging for all of us. Next slide, please. So what are we doing about it? So we do have a recruiter, Debbie Robinson. She is an employee of the Pembroke Regional Hospital, but she recruits for Renfrew County. She takes physicians all across the county wherever they want to practice. There are also other recruiters in Renfrew County. The Renfrew Victoria Hospital, Renfrew area has a recruiter, and so does Barry's Bay, and DeBerva does some recruitment as well. But there's lots of activity going on, and I'm going to talk a bit more specifically about this. We have the Pembroke Family Medicine Teaching Unit, and I'm not going to say a lot about it because that's Dr. Johnson is the lead, and he will tell you all about their activities. We have, for a few years now, a Renfrew County Primary Care Network, and that's a powerful body of physicians that has come together. It represents physicians from all across the county, and lead physicians and lead executive directors of physician groups. And they have done an incredible amount of work as well on recruitment. And then we want to talk briefly about a couple of innovative primary care models that we have going right now in Renfrew County. Next slide, please. So in terms of recruitment, what do? We attend all possible job fairs. That was definitely challenging during COVID. I remember Debbie Robinson telling me that she was at a virtual job fair. It was a very new experience for her, where people would come in for 10 minutes and then move on to the next recruiter. But outside of that, she tries to attend them all, and Dr. Johnson often goes along with her. We advertise wherever we can, whether it's social media. There are Facebook groups for primary care physicians. There are magazines for rural family physicians, the Canadian Medical Journal, like a variety of journals, and we advertise wherever we can. Also, most of you know Debbie Robinson. She is extremely diligent following up with every resident that touches Renfrew County, every student who is in medical school, and she believes in talking to them early on about the opportunities that are existing here, and not to kind of miss those chats with them. And then if there are any potential candidates, whether they come from overseas, whether they come from inside Canada, whether they are students or residents, we have a huge welcoming kind of tour set up, and Debbie leads this. She tours potential workplaces, the city, housing, schools. She sets up things with school principals. We most often take them out for dinner with other physicians, and Debbie tries to find out things about them. She even arranges babysitting for their kids so that they can look at homes when they come. So she does a tremendous job, and we have some volunteers who show this off the city and help with housing and those types of things. And then from a hospital perspective as well, we assist with anything that's needed in terms of licensing, work visas, and there are lots of actually rural incentive programs as funding available for physicians who join us in Pembroke. What is it, $80,000 over 3 years?
Yeah, $80,000 over 4 years, and that is a provincial program. So across the province, depending on how rural your community is, they do modify that number a little bit to try to incentivize rural areas.
Yeah, so Pembroke is actually part of that, and we are very lucky on that front. So I'm gonna hand it over to Dr. Johnson and talk to you about the rest of our initiatives.
Thank you, Sabina. So moving on to our next key strategy. So in terms of recruiting physicians, and especially to rural areas, there's two key kind of evidence kind of based areas that are, the most evidence. One is having people enter med school from rural areas. So, and then the other is training people rurally. So this is part of, both of those initiatives. So the Pembroke Family Medicine Teaching Unit, so that's the practice that I work out of. Back 6 years ago was a small office. It had 4 physicians and 2 residents at the time. It has since grown to, we are now 9 family physicians with 10,500 patients at present. And we've grown to 3 residents per year. And so that means that we have 6 residents in total. Currently, we actually have 7 because we have one that's transferred from Ottawa actually to us. For the next year, we have been approved to increase that number to 4 residents per year. So that'll be 8 in total. And then there is talk about us increasing further to 5 per year. And so this is part of our key strategy in terms of training people locally. And so this comes with the province putting extra funding in for both increased med student spots and increased residency spots that you might have read about in the media. And that comes with opportunities for communities like ours to raise our hand. We've also advocated, and Renfrew will actually be getting another residency spot as well next year. So this is huge for Renfrew County, these numbers. And the reason why these numbers are so important is, so our program is about 13 years old. Don't quote me on the exact length, but 80% of the residents that have graduated from our program have stayed for at least part of a period of time after graduating in Renfrew County, and that's 80%. So there we're talking about 22 physicians, and then looking at least 5 years after, we have still retained 60% of those permanently. So that's 17 physicians that have stayed, and almost all of those are doing comprehensive family medicine. So that means, working in an office-based practice, doing people of all ages, and also they are working across the county. So we have a number of physicians that are working in Deep River, in Barry's Bay, at the Petawawa Clinic, at the Whitewater Clinic here in Pembroke, and even in Renfrew. So it's been a huge recruitment to the entire county, this program, which is why it's part of our key strategy to push those numbers up and train more people locally. Other things that we've done over the past 2 years was we've started a pilot program. So our residency program, so residents stay with us for the entire 2 years of training. So they do their core rotations at the Pembroke Regional Hospital. But again, we wanted them to experience even smaller communities. Because rural communities aren't all the same, and the size of the hospital differs greatly depending on which rural community you're in. So we are actually now placing residents that are interested in both Barry's Bay and in Deep River as well, furthering that partnership across the county for those residents that are interested in more remote medicine. And again, the goal with that is to further help attachment across the county. And we thought it was important to mention the 4 most recent grads did all stay in the county as well. Next slide. So 2 other innovative projects. I mean, I don't think I need to go on about VTAC. I'm sure you guys all know about that. The data speaks for itself. It's been a hugely important part. And when we talk about solving and helping the unattached patient problem, we also have to help patients that are currently unattached that we unfortunately can't attach right now, but need to get care and may not need to resort to the emergency department. So VTAC has greatly assisted patients in that regard. And, it's estimated that it saves about 1,000 ED visits per month. Another innovative program is called the Integrated Virtual Care Program, and this is run through the Petawawa Centennial. And so what this does is the family physician is not local, so they live elsewhere. They aren't willing to relocate to this region, but they are willing to provide healthcare to this region. And so we are able to have them work virtually with in-person team-based care that's able to do the visits when in-person visits are needed. So again, it's an innovative project. It doesn't, it's being researched to again make sure that it provides the outcomes that we're hoping it does. But again, because our rates of unattachment are so high, we really need to try a lot of different solutions to try to help address the need right now and not just wait to get enough nurse practitioners and family physicians in the area. Next slide. So other things that are being done across the province, so expanding the scope of providers, and the most recent one to that is the expansion of what pharmacists can do. That just came into effect at the start of the year. And again, that's for 13 conditions. And again, this is being done across many different, I think all provinces now, but it's just one example of scope. Other ones that we're using locally, so physician assistants, and we have two of those working in my office, and that's allowing us to take on, so in my practice is 300 patients larger than I would be able to handle, because I have a physician assistant that's working with me that's able to, again, do things that don't necessarily need to be done by me, but is being overseen by me. And so we have now 3 physician assistants working in primary care across the county. And we, again, we talk about this at our network meetings to try to encourage others to consider adopting this. Again, recruitment efforts are challenging, as we mentioned, because again, we're competing, really across the Western world. It's very competitive right now and at different provincial levels. So other things that can be done to help physicians is offloading some work that, again, that doesn't need to be done by us. So finding efficiencies on the back end, increasing connected care. And again, Ontario Health teams are working actively on doing things like that. Team-based care is huge, and we're lucky to have a large amount of teams in Renfrew County. So these are the family health teams and CHCs that you hear about. So these wraparound services to patients like dietitians, social workers, and other important team members that can offload some work and provide high quality care for patients that helps improve outcomes. And other things that can be done is helping patients navigate the system. So it's very, very complicated. So again, if we work hard and make it easier for people to know where to go, that they have an option to turn to. So it doesn't always need to be going in to the office to see your physicians to figure out the next step. There's a certain number of things that could be offloaded there. So what helps in terms of recruiting physicians to an area, and really this goes with any kind of profession or anybody in terms of where they're choosing to live. So we know from the studies, partner employment is huge, especially in rural areas. And so we've been very lucky. Our recruiter, Deb, is a very connected individual to hugely assist with that regard, and I've appreciated all the help from all the councils for, again, helping working with local employers to make sure that we can find partner employment opportunities. Quality education and daycare is absolutely huge, and physicians will look at that sort of thing when comparing different rural communities, and we're all a little bit type A, so creating Excel lists and looking at those things is not unknown. And so a city being attractive to live in, and I mean, Main Street in Pembroke, I mean, it's looking awesome. Love it. outdoor, things to do, activities for children, quality housing and rental housing. And certainly we have a lot of locums that come to the area as well, and having a place for them to stay is also huge, but can be a challenge depending on what the cycle is looking like. So what does the future, I am optimistic. So again, with the growth of our residency program and with our retention rates, we we've talked to all the physicians in Renfrew County to get a sense of the human resources and retirements and what people's plans for the future are. And certainly in the Pembroke region, like we knew this was coming, and now we are at what I believe is the worst part here, and we've got a lot of young physicians in all of our Renfrew County communities now. So I think we are certainly through the worst part, and now we're looking on the up. And so I am optimistic that by 2025 that we'll be in an improved situation than we are right now. We still need to find innovative models so that we can provide primary care to the large proportion that is unattached, because we know that we got to do better in that regard. And I know that it's very frustrating to the public right now if you are unattached, or if you know someone that's unattached and they're trying to navigate and to know what to do. So my advice to them is to register on Healthcare Connect. I know there's some barriers for some people in registering there, but registering helps us get better data, and we do take people from Healthcare Connect. So my clinic, for example, we took 100 people from Healthcare Connect in November. So the list, it's not moving fast from where it is because of our recent retirements, but it is moving, and that's where we will be taking people from.
Thank you. Very informative. Questions from members of council? Councillor Purcell, Councillor Fernier, Councillor Keel.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the presentation tonight. I think you hit the nail on top of the head in regards to the engagement with Renfrew County, as well as the city, townships, hospitals, health teams, physicians, specialists, medical service providers, recruitment teams, different stakeholders. You hit the whole gamut. But you touched on a few different, I guess, opportunities in terms of the administrative burden and as well as navigating the system. During campaigning, I was out and talking to a bunch of different physicians in regards to Epic and MyChart, and the issue is that, from what I'm hearing, is that the Pembroke Regional Hospital utilizes paper-based medical files and does not use Epic, the electronic medical management system, to capture and track patient information and test results, as well as referrals and clinical notes. And it makes it difficult for the physicians to manage patient care and maintain continuity of care. Easier engagement with the parent Ottawa hospitals in terms of accessing additional medical and health services and specialist referrals is really, really important. And we see, real-time results, faster assessments, and potentially expediting treatment. Patients may not be required to travel or be transferred to Ottawa in some cases in healthcare facilities to have their medical situation assessed by medical resources. And I think this alignment with the Ottawa Hospital will also help attract locum physicians to Pembroke from Ottawa due to their familiarization with the current Epic system used to retain and review patient information, as well as provide continuity of care with patients and their health teams. I know physicians that I've spoke to, they want to work smarter and not harder. They want to have a life, right? And in order to do that, I think that there's an opportunity to look at those opportunities to reduce the administrative burden, as well as to help patients navigate the system. I know MyChart, I'm quite familiar with it. It pops up, it gives me the next time I'm going in for my treatment. I get an after-visit summary. I've got all my test results. So that's an opportunity there. The other thing, and it's number two that I kind of picked up on, was PRH and Life Labs do not place test results in the provincial database. So it makes it difficult for physicians, regardless where they are located across Ontario. They cannot access the information easily, which is a real problem for physicians, and it creates additional workload. And this is coming straight from physicians. and potentially frustrating the healthcare professionals and patient lab and diagnostic test results. So often leads to unnecessary follow-up appointments. It taxes the healthcare systems, through repeat assessments or visits to primary care. It's also increases the additional hardship and expenses for patients and travel, parking and inventory transfers, unnecessary pain and suffering in some cases, because there's instances where individuals are transferred, but they don't have the information in terms of the test results that are coming from some of the local labs or the hospitals here that doesn't kind of follow along with them. Can you talk a little bit about those two big pieces?
Yeah, I'm happy to address that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. So, first of all, to clarify, EPIC is one of 3 large electronic medical record systems in the province of Ontario, and hospitals have to purchase those systems at great expense on their own. And the Ottawa Hospital happens to have EPIC, and so a couple of other smaller hospitals in Renfrew County as well. But the Queensway Carleton Hospital, the Morpho Hospital, for example, have a different type of electronic medical record. All of us, including Pembroke, has our diagnostics and our lab results sitting in a provincial lab system that people, physicians in primary care, physician specialists can go into and look up all of those results. The Life Labs PIH issue is actually resolved now, because we just did a large digital transfer for our lab testing now. So the other portion of that is that the primary care physicians do not have access to EPIC. They also have, and Dr. Johnson will clarify that after, what that system looks like. They also have choices of electronic medical records. The important piece in the province of Ontario is that we find a system where all of the data of patients, regardless of whether it's EPIC or some other called electronic system, is available to all patients and all physicians provincially. And, the information that I'm reading from the provincial government and the Ontario Hospital Association is that there is a huge drive right now to fix that. And so that regardless of what system you use in the province, and whether it's in primary care, home and community care, long-term care, and the hospital system, that all of it gets deposited into a provincial repository. And a patient portal is accessed from there. Because it's wonderful to have EPIC, and I know how great it is for patients, but the fact is, if you had any services at the Queensway Carleton Hospital, you would be in a different electronic medical record, and that doesn't necessarily correspond. But the data from EPIC, the data from all of the other systems go into the provincial system. So physicians do have access to those. Now, from the Pembroke Regional Hospital side, we are definitely looking at what is our next step in terms of that, and the board will make a decision this year, I'm certain, on where we're going next in fixing our own situation. But it is, again, at a large expense, and some hospitals are able to afford it, or were able to afford it earlier, and some not so early.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's been a while since we had a visit. So thank you. That was, you had mentioned, Councillor Purcell had mentioned the EPIC situation. And so thank you for explaining that, because I too have been in the situation where I was out of town with my husband and they couldn't access results that were here, so they had to run the same test. So it's good to know that that's being looked at. It's unfortunate that it comes on to the individual hospitals to fund that, because it should be a provincial, funded program that's tied in with the OHIP number or something of that nature. But anyway, it's beyond my pay scale. So thank you again for presenting, and I hope that you continue the success you're having. I'm one of those unmatched patients. I was Dr. Baxter's patient, so yeah, VTAC is my best friend right now. So, but thank you. Continue the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Keel?
I have a couple questions, but I'll start on the VTAC one. Do we have any indication about whether it's going to be continued past March 2023? I'm assuming if the answer was yes, you might have said something, but I know in talking with Debbie Robinson, I know the province seems to look at it positively, but in a non-committal fashion.
Yeah, I would agree. Those are the exact words that I would use. We have no promise of funding, but, I'm very, very hopeful that it's going to continue on. Maybe to mention here as well, and how incredibly helpful VTAC has been and is for our patients in our region. But the hope is that long-term, we won't need VTAC, right? If our vision is moving in the right direction and we can attach patients, I don't know whether it's 2025 or a little bit later, but at some point, it would be great for every patient to have a primary care physician, and we wouldn't need that system anymore. But in the meantime, we absolutely need it, and I'm hoping that the province will continue to fund it. I don't know, Richard, whether you have better insight on this than I do.
I mean, we need solutions, right? And VTAC has been a highly successful solution in Renfrew County. So it would be a shame if that was to go.
If I may, from the chair, as counsel, I had a couple little points, if I may. The percentiles you presented, about 20% here and 10 or 12% in other places. Has that taken into consideration in that 20 percentile, how many of those people are over the age of 65? And the reason I ask that is, we're all looking for industry within the communities, et cetera, but Pembroke seems to be a catchment for retirement. People are coming here. If you look around at the growth, you'll see that, condo-style units are being built, apartments along the riverfront. People seem to be coming here to escape the helter-skelter of the city, to look for the solitude of fresh air and clean water, and a physician, of course. They're all saying, I need a family doctor. What percentile of those people would be over the age of 65, and there are long-range plans to encounter that influx of, or the influx of these older people coming to our communities? Because we are an aging demographic. I mean, we look around this table, we're not spring chickens. You folks are, but we're not. But I'm just saying, what preparation has been made for that? And could someone answer that for me?
Yeah, so certainly the breakdown of the data reassuringly showed that we have a lower, our unattached rate was roughly around 8% for the 65 plus. So it was much higher in the people between the ages of 18 and kind of 45. And so people that are new to the area are the ones that are going to struggle with attachment locally because, again, we don't have the providers locally right now to take them on. And so they would wait. So at least the data is in the right direction, that we know that directionally we are taking on the more vulnerable, the higher rates of attached for them. But again, in terms of the futuristic planning, dealing with the increasingly complexity that's happening with care as the population ages. Again, this is across the province, across Canada, and we need to make sure that we got the human resources to deal with that, and we got the right models of care to deal with that. Again, that goes into maximizing the scope of providers, removing all these burdens that we talked about, and kind of altering our healthcare system to make it even more patient-centered.
Very good. One little point, and then I'll close off. Some time ago on CTV News, they did a story about a pediatrician flying into Pembroke to provide service in our area. And I mean, that kind of stunned me, and especially when we're looking at, doctors and shortages, and that this physician would be getting on a plane, possibly, I don't know where he's coming from, Toronto, and coming here and looking after somebody. Who are those somebodies? Are those patients that he would have here? Would he go to the hospital to attend to people upon their request? Would you have any knowledge of how that would work, or how that took place?
Yeah, so I mean, I wasn't part of the running of that program. I do know that, yeah, we had a pediatrician, I'm not sure if they are still coming, that was providing intermittent care in Petawawa to patients and taking referrals across the county. Again, pediatrics is another area that we struggle across Renfrew County, and also across the entire Ottawa region and having enough providers. So people in this region do have to travel a distance to go and get the care when they need it, typically traveling to Ottawa where there is slightly more available. But I would say this whole part of Ontario is lacking in terms of pediatrics.
Thank you for your indulgence. One final thing, 2 doctors retired, huge patient list. How do you recruit people to come and say, look, we've got, this guy had 2,000, this guy, I don't know what the numbers are. Is that feasible for a young physician to say, I can't handle that, that's too many people? Should they be, and I don't know what transpires when a doctor retires. Does he say, here, I've got 4,000 patients, they're $2 each? I don't know how that transpires. Or can you divide that list and say, look, instead of 4,000 people, being taxed with one guy, and these guys were flying, they had wings on their feet. I saw them everywhere, in the ER, their practice, everywhere. And I mean, it's not fair to them. And as I think one of the other counselors said, these guys want a life. These people, these ladies and gentlemen want a life. They don't want to be working 24/7 and then ending up in the hospital themselves. So is there any way that these type of large practices can be subdivided into subgroups and saying, look, we've got, here's 800 patients to start? I don't know. Is that possible? How does that work?
Yeah, and so certainly, and I mean one of the biggest challenges across the province will be dealing with these large practices of what we call fee-for-service providers. So they're in a type of billing model that again a lot of new grads do not want to practice in, and most of them are or a lot of them are using paper-based charts. And so trying to recruit a doctor to take over a practice like that is highly unlikely. So we've creatively over the past couple of years actually succeeded in getting a couple physicians that were close to retirement to join group practices for this very reason. Again, it puts their charts now on an electronic medical record. Again, it attaches their patients to team-based care, and it allows for us to use innovative strategies, even if we can't recruit a physician to take over that practices, that we're more likely to find a way to manage those. And so we've done that successfully for 2 of the practices in Renfrew County. We weren't successful for those 2 that you mentioned. But yeah, you're right. There is different ways to take on those patients. A typical roster size would be more 1,000 to 1,500 for a doc that's starting out now. And again, the model of care is a little bit different than it was, say, 30 years ago. The expectations from patients are different. And so all of that goes into the type of medicine that's being practiced. So I wouldn't be trying to recruit a physician to take over a 2,000 to 3,000 person practice. We'd be looking at altering that.
Councillor Keel.
You sort of just foreshadowed my second question, which likes to tell the story about how when either my brother or I were born, how she was able to go to the family doctor's house on Saturday and knock on the door because he said, if you need anything, Alana, come on by. And now I'm being told that some doctors, and I'll be honest, I think I kind of see this in the legal profession as well, they're looking for more of a 9 to 5. They don't necessarily want to be hiring a staff and doing the HR and they want to come in, they want to focus on their medicine and they want to clock out. So I do wonder, the one thing we don't seem to have, well, I think Pembroke Regional has a clinic that's not really a clinic, that acts like a clinic. I know on the website officially it says it's not a clinic. It's kind of a clinic. Has anyone looked at any of those kinds of options as to whether or not the county or whether some third-party group putting together more of a clinic model would attract some of the younger doctors and whether that would help get us through this current period. In a way, Renfrew County VTAC is doing exactly that. But certainly if we lose that model, I fear that there'll be a lot more people showing up, for example, to the hospital for things that they, I say this with respect to anyone that does that, shouldn't be attending at the hospital for.
Yeah, so kind of two parts to that. So new grads in general want to join practices with other physicians and a team around them if they're able to. And again, the majority of our practices in Renfrew County are that type of model. So we got the highly attractive model for people to join, where again, there's people that will manage the staffing and all of that. Again, lead physicians may be part of that depending on what the practice is, but so that people can be turnkey here. So we have removed that barrier really in any community that you want to practice in. We've removed that as a barrier. I think the other part of your question was kind of more the walk-in clinic. Kind of, was that what it getting at? Maybe I'll let you.
Yeah, sure. Our Zone B, I guess, is what you're referring to, and that was out of necessity that we created a subsection of the emergency department to function more like a walk-in clinic. And again, like VTAC, we hope that eventually that service is no longer needed, but right now it is absolutely needed, and I think it's functioning well the way it is designed. But it is part of our emergency department, so that's, so people actually get registered in Emerge and they are triaged there, and that's why it's not considered a walking clinic under our Emerge. But I think going back to what Richard said, we have 4 or 5 different models of team-based care in Renfrew County, so people actually can pick from various ways on how they're even compensated and how much allied health support that they have. So we actually have even a lot of flexibility for new physicians to choose. Do they prefer a community health center model like we have in Beachburg, or would they prefer a salaried model like Petawawa Clinic? And so I think we have the options there for physicians. It's attracting physicians to rural Ontario, right? And we all love the area that we live in, but it's not everybody's choice. So.
Thank you. If there are no further questions of council, we've gone a little longer than we should, but it's such an important issue. And we all know that, when we're on the campaign trail, everyone had that same question. What are you going to do? What's happening? And I think you've addressed a lot of that. I think there's some confidence back in the system from your comments tonight that people understand. And it's good to see you coming here. I'm sure that His Worship will invite you here a little more than we've seen you. We know you're all busy, but it's such an important thing in our community. So I would like to thank you for coming and to wish you well. Councillor Fernier, you have another question?
Yeah, I just have a final question. The Petawawa Health Center or Health Clinic, who is responsible for constructing the building and then getting that up and going? Like, who did that? Because I think we need something like that in Pembroke, but I don't know. Is it the doctors? I don't think it was a municipality. Do you know anything about it?
I don't. I don't exactly know how that came to be, but we actually have a couple of, West Champlain Family Health Team that's well functioning. They have allied health staff that supports the physician. So we have models like that in Pembroke. I'm not certain that but I don't know, maybe I shouldn't talk for you, Richard, but I think we are well situated in supporting new physicians in Pembroke as well that want to join a clinic.
I fully agree. And so my practice wouldn't have all those team members directly employed by my clinic, but again, I can refer the patients to the dietitian at the Pembroke Regional Hospital, to the respiratory therapist that's paid by the Connect Well Clinic in Beachburg. So again, what's the model of primary care in the future for these team-based? I think the province is looking at those things and how to efficiently provide those. But I agree. I don't think we need to add an entire other clinic kind of model here. Really, this is a human resources kind of issue here. And I think we got the right models. We just got to convince more people to come and practice in this area. And it's highly competitive right now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Mersman, Dr. Johnson, thank you. We've asked you, what can you do for us? Now, what can we do for you, I guess is the question. Your recruiter's doing an excellent job from the looks of it. What's the requirement? What are you looking for something from us as well? I shouldn't ask that question, Your Worship, because we're not in budget yet.
It's very interesting because Dr. Johnson and I talked about this, if we were to be asked a question, and I think you're doing the right things. I think making the city attractive, as we said, Pembroke is beautiful. We have made so much progress, making it accessible, creating outdoor activity, the trail that we see outside, providing opportunities, looking at how do we create employment for partners. Those are the types of things we think. Continue to do those kinds of things because that's helping us to recruit physicians to the area. I don't know, Richard.
Yeah, I would agree to that. And also, I think it was important for us to come and speak today because I think our communication out hasn't been good enough on what we are trying to do to deal with this very important issue to the public. So I think you guys are holding us accountable to make sure that we are working on these things. So I think do feel free to invite us back, or if you're hearing things differently and you don't think we're going in the right direction, happy to be called back here.
Thank you for coming, and on behalf of His Worship and our council and our residents, we appreciate the information. We hope to see you again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
At our new business, good evening, Ms. Soriel. Chief Building Official and Interim Building Inspector. You have a report for us.
Good evening and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
The city has hired a new chief building official after the resignation of Mark Schultz in the fall of 2022. Our new chief building official is Paul McLean, and he began his position today. So Paul comes to the city from Brockville, where he was working as a building inspector, and he's received a certification from the Ontario Building Officials Association to become a chief building official. Paul has many of the required Ontario building officials courses. He has the legal course, the house, small buildings, plumbing house, and Glenn Gordon, who has been acting as chief building official and has been working 2 days a week for the city, he will be kept on retainer until the new chief building official has obtained all of his courses. The main course that Mr. McLean has to obtain is the large building course, and he's indicated that he has completed the course and he's just getting ready to write the exam. So Glenn will be appointed as interim building inspector until Paul has successfully completed that course. And finally, Mr. McLean would also be appointed as a bylaw enforcement officer. So these bylaws will be before council this evening.
Thank you. Questions from council? Seeing none, before we go on to the next item, I was so anxious to wish you all a Happy New Year. I missed the approval of the minutes, Section 5. We do need an approval of the minutes from December 13th. Moved by Councillor Plummer, seconded by Councillor Fernier. Those in favor? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thanks for your indulgence.
Okay, so this is the More Homes Built Faster Act. So on October 25th, the province introduced Bill 23, and that's the More Homes Built Faster Act. And this bill received royal assent on November 28th. And the overall goal is to increase housing supply by building 1.5 million homes in the next 10 years. The Act amends 10 existing acts, and while the stated objectives of the acts are to support increased housing supply, to improve housing affordability, and to facilitate more timely approvals, the various amendments do not serve this intent and will result in the loss of environmental protections, heritage conservation, urban design, and accountability to the public, in addition to significant financial implications for municipalities. Additional regulations are anticipated to be released by the province in support of this new act. In the absence of all proposed amendments, the entirety of the potential impact on the City of Pembroke is not yet known. Staff will continue to review any further proposed legislation presented by the province and will provide further reports considering potential effects to the city as necessary. So this new act amends the Planning Act in the following ways. In regards to site plan approval, the act removes exterior design as a consideration in the process and no longer requires developments of 10 or fewer residential units to receive site plan approval. And this is currently in effect as of November 28th. So the removal of exterior appearance considerations from the site plan review process is anticipated to result in reduced built form quality, negative impact to the streetscape, and less integration between new developments and the existing community character. So the city and other municipalities in the province are being stripped of a primary quality control mechanism to promote good designs. The city's existing site plan control bylaw establishes that development of 3 or more residential units is subject to site plan approval. Now the act has been passed, we have to amend the site plan control bylaw to state that 11 or more residential units will now be subject to site plan approval. So for smaller developments of 10 residential units or less, the city will have to look at enacting like a site alteration bylaw. This bylaw would at least ensure that drainage issues are dealt with for that development that has 10 units or less. In regards to minor variances, severances, official plans, and zoning bylaws. So this act eliminates the right of appeal for third party, that's like neighbors or residents, for minor variance and severance applications. Appeals are still permitted for official plans and zoning bylaws. The appeals are now limited to the applicant, public bodies, the minister, and a list of specified persons that primarily consist of infrastructure providers, such as utility companies, railways, and telecommunication companies. While these amendments may be proposed to facilitate timely approvals and reduce the number of appeals, the result is the diminishment of a democratic process. Eliminating the ability for third-party appeals will result in frustration in a community that feels shut out of the process. The Ontario Land Tribunal now has the power to dismiss hearings without undue delay and has the power to order costs that will now be routinely charged against parties, which have not been in the past. In regards to draft plans of subdivision, there is now no longer a requirement to host a public meeting prior to receiving a draft plan approval subdivision application. In regards to additional residential units, the new act now requires that official plans and zoning bylaws permit second and third units as of right in detached, semi-detached, or townhouse dwellings. So the units can be provided both interior to the principal dwelling or one interior and one detached, like in the backyard. This does not require rezoning, nor does the neighbors have the right to be notified. And again, there is no appeal rights to these additional units. And parking is limited to 1 parking space per unit. Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator Order. This is a new type of ministerial order that allows municipalities to ask the province to make a decision on a planning application dealing with any type of housing, including a community housing or affordable housing. And this planning application does not have to have regard for the provincial policy statement, nor does it have to conform to the city's official plan. And this order cannot be appealed, and it's decided by the province. There was another bill which was recently passed on April 14th, 2022, which was Bill 109. And this bill requires municipalities to refund fees if they fail to meet statutory deadlines for decisions on zoning bylaw amendments or site plan agreements. So these new refund requirements will come into force, were to come into force January 1st, 2023. But during a recent webinar, and we've received a letter from the minister indicating that this date is, they're trying to push back this date now to July 1st, 2023. So to help meet these statutory deadlines, the complete application requirements that the city has in place in the official plan for official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, and draft plans will now have to apply to site plan applications. So the planning department will have to amend the official plan to ensure that site plans are now included in a complete application to ensure the clock does not start ticking until that application has been received. This act also makes changes to the Conservation Authorities Act, which really doesn't have any kind of bearing or impact on the city because there is no local conservation authority in Renfrew County. And it also makes significant changes to the Heritage Act. And one of the major changes to that is the dismantling of the heritage registers through the removal of listed properties. So most municipalities have a list of potentially designated properties that they would like to see as heritage designated, but now they're being required that if you don't designate them after 2 years, the whole list is gone. And so then there's no recourse there to register them unless you start the whole process again. In regards to the Development Charges Act, the Development Charges is a growth funding tool to recover costs associated with growth, and the Act now permits residential unit exemptions, new statutory exemptions, mandatory phase-in development charges, rental housing discounts, and interest rates on eligible installment plans. These changes will reduce funding to build infrastructure that housing growth needs, and the city will have to make the decision to reduce service levels or raise property taxes to fund growth-related costs. So I'll just give you an example. So under this new act, if there's a residential rental apartment, okay, and I'm just talking one apartment that's being built, the present development charge for the apartment unit is $2,260. Okay, with the new changes to the Act, the developer would be eligible for a 15% reduction since the city is in its second year of its development charges bylaw. And if the apartment rental unit was a 2-bedroom, it would be eligible for another 20% reduction. So the reduced development charge based on the province's new criteria is $1,536.80. So that being a loss of development charges for the city, just for one apartment unit, is $723.20, just to give you an idea. The Act exempts nonprofit housing, affordable housing, and attainable units from development charges. So no development charges can be charged on those types of units. The province is defining affordable residential units as those having rents or purchase prices of 80% of average market value or average purchase price respectively. And we still don't know where we're going to get that 80%, what that number will be. And then the main question is, if they're residential units, how do we ensure that they keep that affordable ownership in the future? So they may get it now and they may be exempted from the development charges, but what happens in a year or two from now? Are those rents going to stay affordable? And one of the other issues is the municipality must spend 60% of the water, sewer, or road-related development charge reserve fund every year. So in the past, we've been accumulating it until the project is ready to go. But now the project may not be ready to go, but we're still going to have to spend 60% of our development charges reserves. And the province hasn't stated what consequences if this amount is not spent. In regards to parkland dedication, the city has used parkland dedication as a means to acquire land for park purposes since 1990, and the Act has a new statutory exemption. So thus, parkland dedication does not apply to nonprofit housing, additional residential units, and there are discounts for affordable housing, attainable housing, and affordable rental units. But these regulations have not yet been released, so we don't know the full impact, and I will get back to you on that. With further exemptions and requirements for parkland cut in half based on the number of dwelling units, this will reduce quality, safe, and accessible parkland for a community. And again, the municipality must spend 60% of the funds in its cash in lieu of parkland account annually. So financial implications, the proposed changes to the Development Charges Act and the Planning Act regarding development charges and parkland dedication have direct financial impacts to the city. There will also be a loss of revenue for site plan agreements for 10 units or less, and we have to make sure that we comply with the statutory deadlines for rezoning applications, minor variance applications, and severance applications. The proposed staff will continue to analyze the proposed regulations of the Act and provide additional financial implications to the city. So if there's any questions.
Questions, members of council? Councillor Fernier?
Not really a question, just a comment. Seems like this was a knee-jerk reaction to the crisis that we're seeing because of the pandemic. I mean, we all know there's a shortage, but there's a shortage of affordable housing. So to me, they're not telling us all the consequences, but we know what the consequences are to our municipality. There's no guarantee that any of these are going to be affordable for any length of time. You're absolutely right, because they haven't thought it through. They're just saying this is what's going to happen. All these developments are going to take place. Meanwhile, the municipality is going to lose money. Developers can still develop at a reduced rate, and nothing says it's going to be affordable for the people that are now having a crisis. I mean, it's a knee-jerk reaction, and I think that we're the ones that are going to be holding the empty cash bin. So that's just my comment. I mean, I know that these development charges are necessary in order to support these new developments, and it's nice to say it's going to be a cheaper, well, everybody's got to follow these. It's not just Pembroke. This is like provincially. But I just think they're trying to make themselves look good at our expense. Anyway, that's my rant.
Councillor Kale?
I mean, this legislation is absolutely atrocious. It's one of the worst pieces of legislation that I think has actually come out of the provincial government in a number of years. It is not only, I completely agree with Councillor Lefrenier that it was a knee-jerk reaction, but not only that, I think it's a very GTA-centered reaction. I get that trying to build in Toronto, trying to build in Mississauga, and that is exceptionally difficult. And even when you look over the last few years with their infill policies and whatnot, the city of Pembroke has land to develop. The town of Petawawa has land to, Renfrew County has land to develop. But yet what we're seeing from Toronto is legislation that I think is looking in its own backyard and saying we have problems here, we need to shoehorn houses into lots that frankly shouldn't have more than one unit. We're having to, we're tearing down buildings to build large apartment buildings, but we're not having that issue up here in Renfrew County by and large. We do have a housing problem, and I will recognize that without question. But these issues, I mean, on the site plan controls, the whole purpose of the site plan controls was to remove the power of developers to willy-nilly go and do whatever they want without any care for the local neighborhood or the municipality in general. So what they're completely missing by removing site plan controls is the fact that the site plan control was brought in because there was a prior problem once before. And they're ignoring that in order to get things built faster. The zoning requirements, not needing extra zoning. I have a question here. I have a few questions, but Your Worship, I might yield if after this one, if others want to jump in.
Go ahead.
Is there any concern for example, when I was canvassing on Melton Street, the apartment building on Angus Campbell Drive went up. A number of the residents complained to me that they felt that there were water pressure issues after the apartment was built and those kinds of things. So this new zoning that allows you to put in secondary units and in some cases third units, is there any accounting for the fact that our municipal services need to have the capability to service that kind of sudden build?
Through you, no, because we're considered on water, municipal water and municipal sewer. So there is no accountability. They think that we should be able to handle that, those three uses on a lot.
You have another question, Councillor Gill? I do, if anyone else... You go ahead, and then we'll wrap it around.
With respect to the development charges, do we have an estimate of what this could cost the city? Or is it possible, maybe for the next meeting, for you to look at 2021, use that as an example? Had the law applied in 2021, what would we have lost last year, as an example?
I can certainly do that and provide that to you. I can either provide it to you like tomorrow in a memo or wait till the next meeting. It's up to you, but I can get that information to you.
I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Is it possible to increase building levies to account for the loss of development charge monies?
Building levies, you mean building permit fees?
Yes.
Okay, so we had, we did a building permit fee study several years ago, and there is the ability to increase the fees because, again, the provincial government is saying you can only have fees for building permits which covers your costs. So again, the cost, you know, for the cost of, you know, the chief building official to review and inspect, the cost for our planning technician, you know, to review the zoning, cost for the office space, you know, things like that. So we put that together. We could be higher than we were, but council at the time felt that they wanted to ensure that they were comparable with other, you know, our neighboring municipalities. So that's why they stayed where they are.
A quick follow-up to that one. Has there been any talk amongst the planners as to whether or not that is an option that we might look at? I do want the city of Pembroke to be competitive. So certainly I appreciate your point, and I appreciate the prior council's view on that. But it would be nice to know if it's because to me it's kind of coming from the same pot. It's all coming from the developer. So I would, if I'm going to find fees somewhere, I would prefer that it come from the development than it come off the backs of other taxpayers. So I don't know if there's room for you to perhaps consult with some of your county colleagues, but if that's allowable and permissible under the new legislation, I think it might be an avenue that I, at least on this council, would like to take a look at.
Okay, and we do have a group, a planners group in Renfrew County, and I can reach out and maybe we can schedule a meeting in the very near future.
Thank you. Other questions of council? I have one. Go ahead, Councillor Plummer.
I guess just piggybacking on the back of Councillor Keel's comments about the development charges, you said that in the comments the affordable housing units basically aren't even calculated. You can't charge development fees on that, is that correct?
That's correct. If they're considered affordable housing, then you would not be able to charge development charges for those.
Right, then just circling back to that, I think you mentioned in the report is 80% of the market price, but you know, is there any indication from the province what they're considering market price, or is that just local market price?
No, we haven't heard exactly what
So
that is. So there's still some holes in
Right.
the legislation, and so we're waiting on
Yeah,
more
because
information.
every municipality would be a different market. A market in Ottawa is certainly a lot different than here and a little different than Toronto, so that's, okay, thank you.
Yes, we'll keep an eye on that for sure.
Thank you. Ms. Soriel, I have a question for you. How long have you been a planner?
Since 1990.
That's quite a while.
Now you're aging me.
And you've seen, no, I'm not trying to age you. I'm trying to voice your experience and your knowledge in my next question. In all the years that you've been a planner, I'm not trying to put you on a spot, have you seen legislation of this nature that would be more counterproductive to a community such as ours than any other?
Never, never. And in the last, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years, there have been, I can't even count how many amendments there have been to the Planning Act. And, but the last couple have been really what I feel is detrimental to planning and the foundation of planning in Ontario.
I'll ask you one final question, and Councillor Fernier, you were away at a professional development day some time ago in regards to this very bill, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
What did your the people that you deal with, your peers, think about the legislation in principle?
So I sit on the board of directors. I'm a council member for the Ontario Professional Planners Institute. And so we have meetings every 3 months, and they are all in agreement that this is counterproductive to planning. In fact, OPPI has sent out several papers, discussion papers about this and about how, there are some things that are positive, but mostly they feel are negative, but we haven't been heard. And sometimes the discussion period closes quicker than what they've told us. It doesn't seem like any thought or consideration by the province is given to these, submissions that are presented to them.
Thank you. Councillor Fernier?
Well, thank you. That was going to be my question, is what can we do to stop this in its tracks and just sort of put a red flag up? Because we're not the only ones, as you say, it's come up in discussions, it's detrimental. I mean, we know ourselves, even with all the checks and balances we have with site plans, etc., we still have neighbors that, are unhappy with a new build, but we control that to a point because we'll have them put a berm in, or we'll make sure that there's proper fencing, or, this is going to just be dog's breath all over the place. Like, we're going to have council full of people very unhappy with the community, and not just this council, across Ontario. So I don't understand. Like I said, I don't know who they're trying to please, because it certainly is not going to be residents in small communities like ours.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's the unfortunate part, is the people will not have a say, for a minor variance or a severance that's next door to them or anything like that. They'll have no appeal rights whatsoever.
I know we don't have any conservation areas within our region, but places like the Oaks Moraine, where the province is looking at building new homes, I think they have to be very cautious because we're dealing with climate change issues here. Those areas, help the environment, help soak up water, etc. I think there's got to be some climate impact for the future, and hopefully the province will take a second look at that. Further questions? If not, no. Thank you. Reached the end of our discussions. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Keel, seconded by Councillor Plummer. We are adjourned. We'll go on to a striking committee. Your Worship.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the striking committee to order for January 3rd. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Councillor Keel?
Disclosure of a pecuniary interest pursuant to... Disclosure of a pecuniary interest dating back to the December 20th, 22 meeting that I was not available at. So I am required to make the disclosure as soon after there as possible. The disclosure, of course, was that my sibling, Kyle Keel, was an applicant for various committees, including at least one committee that had remuneration attached to it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any others? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. Councillor Keel, Councillor Plummer, those in favor? That's carried. Next item up is PBIA nominations. Mr. Unruh?
Yes, Your Worship. The recommendation in front of you is that committee direction is requested regarding the membership of the Pembroke Business Improvement Areas, the PBIA Board of Management. So the background on it is that the nominations have been received from the PBIA. They're attached to your package. And the individuals that were identified are Stacey Taylor from Little Things Canning Company, Renette Rublat, Dot, Kelly Holleran, Ottawa Valley Power Play, Upper Ottawa Valley Chamber of Commerce, Jody Suave, Inner Strength Training and Coaching, and Catherine Grant, the Bath Boutique, and Andrew Poslowet, pretty sure I got that wrong, but Normando's Tacos. So the striking committee is required to provide a recommendation to council regarding these nominations, and the appointment would be until the end of the current term of council, which is November 14th, 2026. Financial implications, as all of these members of this committee serve for no remuneration, there would be no cost associated with this action.
Thank you, Mr. Unruh. So the matter is before council this evening, but I would entertain a motion for the a recommendation to council in respect to those that are listed therein. Councillor Plummer, second by Councillor Keel. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the striking committee for this evening. Councillor Plummer, second by Councillor Keel. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Finance Administration Committee meeting. As Councillor Abdallah is away, I will be chairing this meeting as Vice Chair. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move on. The approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Lafreniere, seconded by Councillor Keel. Errors or omissions? Seeing none. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. New business, the Pembroke Fire Department, professional Pembroke Fire Department report. I always forget that word, professional, because that's what our guys are. Chief Sell.
Thank you, Chair. And once again, Happy New Year to everyone. It's nice to see you again. So December, you'll notice in the report, December was a fairly short month with the reporting period. So it constitutes basically a 3-week period. We continued with our normal inspections, the same as what we've been doing for 2022. We did conduct some safety training at the Pembroke Armories during the month of December for 25 members. The big focus for December was our public safety messaging, which we took care of on 3 platforms. The first one, of course, was with the radios, where our messaging was specifically for holiday safety. In terms of carbon monoxide safety, escape planning with family, especially when family is coming to stay over the holidays, holiday smoke alarm messaging, and the importance of staying responsible over the holidays as well. The other platform we used, of course, was our social media pages, where we once again conducted the 12 days of holiday fire and carbon monoxide safety in conjunction with the Fire Marshal's Public Fire Safety Council and MyFM. So we recorded 12 holiday tips, safety tips, which MyFM released over a 12-day period. And those tips coincided with our social media pages, where we had information there. And we were also lucky enough to partner with Your TV, and we were able to have Your TV come in, and they did they recorded the 12 days of holiday safety on 30-second clips with our firefighters, which they also released to coincide with our tips. So I felt that was a quite productive campaign for holiday safety messaging. Promotions in December, our firefighter Emma Gibbon has completed all her evaluations and testing and has attained the rank of first-class firefighter effective tomorrow. So I'd like to congratulate Emma on a very arduous 4 years. She studied and was extremely dedicated, and she did a fantastic job. Courses, the city's HR department provided management with equity, diversity, and inclusion training, along with Indigenous reconciliation training and investigating harassment claims training. Our vulnerable occupancies was quite busy for December, where the drills and inspections were completed at Marion Hill. The annual inspection was completed at Supple's Landing. The fire drill was completed in November, and the annual fire drill for the PRH was completed in December, and the upcoming inspection will be later this month. Emergency management, so we did submit the compliance report for 2022 to the province. We are awaiting confirmation on acceptance, but we have been assured that that the city is in a good position going forward with compliance. The Emergency Operations Center, or our meeting room, hosted the Renfrew County Chiefs Association December meeting, hosted Microsoft's Teams training for all the city departments. I hosted a couple other meetings, one namely with the chair and the vice chair of the Finance Administration Committee. The Firefighters Association held their annual Kids Christmas party this December. And of course, the room was also used for in-house training. The Pembroke Firefighters Association made a donation to the Pembroke Regional Hospital this month, or December, sorry. The association also participated in the Christmas Angel program, buying presents for 4 children. The association also donated their time and made a donation to the Kiwanis Toy and Food Drive, and they did work the booth at the mall for a day. And as you recall, later in the month, there was an unfortunate theft of some of the donations, and the association took it upon themselves to reach out to Kiwanis, and they made up for the loss that Kiwanis suffered for that day. So that was an additional $500 donation to Kiwanis. The training is outlined for the month of December in my report. Total number of consultations and inspections was 114 for December. Unfortunately, we did have a couple of property fires, which did accumulate a significant dollar loss of $261,000. And then lastly, you'll see I've broken down the actual totals under the false alarms for 2022. That's it for my report. Thank you.
Questions, members of council? Seeing none, yes, Councillor Keel, go ahead.
Sorry, a little slow on that one. Happy New Year to you and the fire department, and certainly glad to have you here. I don't want you to take this the wrong way, and I think we spoke at the inaugural, and you might know where I'm going with this. There has been some recent discussions about committees and efficiencies at council and whatnot, and obviously we hear from you once a month. I did look back at all of last year's videos. I think Councillor Lafreniere had a couple questions throughout over the whole year, and I think that might have been it. I wonder if you have any thoughts as to whether or not a written report monthly would be sufficient, but less attendances in person before council. I know with our police department, and I might look towards the mayor, I think the police chief shows up twice a year. Twice a year. I just wonder if you had any thoughts. I would like council, this is one of the most comprehensive reports I've ever seen, but I wonder if you had any thoughts on whether ongoing written reports could continue, but perhaps we don't necessarily need to see you every month at this finance committee. Again, I say that respectfully.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. I feel it's important for me to present myself and speak to what the fire department is doing so that you as council can hold me accountable and be aware of our actions and the direction that we are going in. And I do think it's important. I'm quite cognizant of the amount of time allotted for these reports, and I understand your point of view on them, so I do try to keep them as concise as possible while I'm here. But I do think it's important that that I do attend, and I am here for accountability, and so that you can interact with me on that.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Keel? Yes. Keel, Chief. Councillor Fernier?
I appreciate Councillor Keel's, attentiveness, like knowing and respecting staff's time as well. However, sometimes maybe there's not a lot of questions posed that day, but things that come out of budgets, things that we know are coming through the year, this is confirmation of things, number one, that were done, things that were purchased, training that took place that we budgeted for. So it's all kind of wraps up through the year. So by having the chief here, if there's something that was of concern in the community, he's here. rather than just emailing back and forth. So I actually enjoy, even though maybe there's not a lot of, it's accountability, and we see it on paper, we know that's been done. The inspections, we know how many are outstanding. The false alarms, because that was a program we started before your time here. And it's really gotten the false alarms under control. But it's more of a report card through the year to say, okay, checks and balances, this has been done. So really, that's what we look for. That's my opinion.
Councillor Purcell?
Chief Sell, Happy New Year. Can you explain the process in regards to notification to city councillors as well as the mayor in regards to a significant event, like an emergency event? If you could just kind of describe that process, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chair. So with the emergency, within a major emergency, significant emergency, where it's decided that an emergency declaration will be put into place, that is generally a discussion that's had between the Emergency Management Committee. And then we would go from there, and it would be a discussion with CAO UNRWA and the mayor, and then the notification would come out from there. I would be more than happy to share that information with you. I can send it out to you tomorrow. And then with the significant weather events, that is more on the Director of Operations portfolios. I think he follows legislation particular to his area of expertise, and he sends that stuff out. And as far as major fires, generally I do my best to notify all of council as soon as possible after the event has been brought under control.
Section B, Chief, we're good, Council? Your Worship, you good? Partnership with County of Renfrew for flood hazard identification mapping funding application. Chief Sell.
So staff is making the recommendation under council's direction that a letter of support be drafted from the City of Pembroke to the County of Renfrew, confirming the city's support to participate in the flood hazard identification and mapping funding application. That's a lot of words. So we all recall the flooding that has occurred over the last few years within the city, and not only within the city, within the county, and also within the country. So January of last year, being January 2022, the Government of Canada launched its flood hazard identification and mapping program, which is to help Canadians plan and prepare for future floods. So this partnership, it was a partnership with the provincial and territorial governments, and the aim is to complete flood hazard mapping for high-risk areas in Canada. These maps will inform decision-making in support of flood mitigation, adaptation to a changing climate, resilience building, and protection of lives and property. So the funding application would provide up to 50% matched federal funding for eligible flood mapping projects. The County of Renfrew has taken a lead on this grant application, and municipalities with affected shorelines, including the City of Pembroke, were asked to join the grant application to strengthen its support. Due to the extremely short turnaround time for applications, however, the county has reached out for support from municipalities to strengthen the application. The County of Renfrew has since then been successful in gaining funding through the application. So the funding amounts, there is $150,000 coming from the federal government, covering 50% of the costs. The County of Renfrew will cover an additional $15,000. So that leaves an estimated $60,000 to be covered by partner municipalities. So as you can see in the chart provided in the report, the county has broken down the percentage of shoreline, and then the additional cost is listed in the corresponding column. So of course, this is contingent on council's approval. And should other municipalities not approve of this partnership, then the funding portions allocated to each municipality would change. So the financial implications are currently sitting where we're at for the City of Pembroke. The county has stated that municipalities can pay over a 2-year period. So the budget for 2023 and 2024 will see a cost charged to the emergency management of $528 each year if we enter this partnership.
Questions? Councillor Fernier?
So basically, the breakdown of costings could change. So if Petawawa and Whitewater didn't want to chip in, then our amounts would go way up, regardless of the percentage of shoreline we have?
It is possible, but in preliminary discussions with the other members, everybody is quite positive on this partnership.
Good.
These mappings have a lot of a positive, we can get a lot of positive things out of this going forward. A little bit more background, our current mapping that the city has for those flood areas date back to the mid-'80s, which were conducted by, or built by Natural Resources Ontario. So this would bring it up to date. So we're talking about a 40-year improvement.
Okay, thank you very much.
Your Worship, Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm certainly in support or in favor of this particular matter. I can say that last year, Mr. Lewis and I attended a delegation before the Minister of Infrastructure to talk about flooding in Pembroke. And while I recognized in 2019 unprecedented flooding, and I know that Ms. Sorio and the Chief lived through it, so did the Council of the Day live through it. And while I recognize that if you focus, for instance, on the Ottawa River, I know that the majority of our waterfront is city-owned waterfront, not lands owned by residents. But nonetheless, I think it's extremely important to join with the county to pursue this particular mapping. In the chief's new role in terms of emergency management, I think that a lot of good will come from it. I think it will show the province that we are unified in terms of trying to address issues like this. But I do know that when we attended and had that delegation, one of the issues was not just flooding along the Ottawa River, but talking about flooding in general and how does one address it. Well, if you don't show that you're at least wanting to try and plan and try and look at the situation, if you're going to start asking for funds on top of that for various different projects, it's a little short-sighted, I would think. So anyways, I'm in support of what the request is. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Keel.
I'm going to piggyback on the mayor's comment. I think this is a steal of a deal, frankly, for the information that we're going to get. Information breeds planning capability. It breeds comfort in knowing where the more dangerous areas are. Obviously, the amount could change a little. That's true, but at the moment, truly, I mean, the information I think that we're going to get from this is worth significantly more than $1,000. I mean, this is a wonderful collaboration of the county. Obviously, I'd be very thankful to the federal government for offering the funds that they are. But I mean, to me on this one, full speed ahead is really the only way that we should proceed.
Further, Chief? We're good?
I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you for your attendance. Have a good evening. Riverside Park pumping station upgrades. Who will be bringing that in? Mr. Unruh, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Kind of echoing the comments that was made earlier and trying to save on staff time. There'll be times that I will be presenting some of the staff reports, and so this is one of them. So this was a tender that was put out. It was advertised in our local papers and on our website, similar to we normally do. It closed on December 20th at 2 p.m. And then it was opened shortly thereafter by the city purchasing manager and deputy treasurer. JP2G is our consultant on this project, and so they reviewed and analyzed the bids, and the bids are attached. There was one that was non-compliant, and so it was disqualified. So the recommendation in front of you is that the committee approve the contract award for option A for the Riverside Park Pumping Station Upgrade Tender Contract Number 21-2045A to McCrae Excavating Limited in the amount of $402,324.43, excluding HST, being the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Just also add in regards to funding application. So this has been put into the 2023 draft capital budget. And the urgency why we're bringing it forward at this time is that there are several services that feed into this pumping station. So it is at the failure point. There is no more parts available. It doesn't meet health and safety standards. And so we need to get it fixed prior to the opening of Riverside Park. And so that's why we're bringing it forward now. And the contract is in place such that the contractor would complete it prior to the opening of Riverside Park.
So information then tonight, Mr. Unruh?
No, we're looking for...
A motion?
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Fernier.
I would move we approve contract award for option A as recommended.
Moved by Councillor Fernier. Is there a seconder? Councillor Plummer. Discussion. No questions? Those in favor? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item D, Municipal Election Accessibility Report. Ms. Martin.
So this is an information item outlining the various initiatives that were undertaken during the course of the 2022 municipal election. So as per the Municipal Elections Act, 90 days following voting day, a report has to be brought before council listing the identification, removal, and prevention of barriers that affect electors and candidates with disabilities. So this report is to fulfill those requirements. So on May 31st, 2022, the clerk developed and approved the City of Pembroke election policies and procedures, which included internet, traditional voting, and the use of tabulators. Those policies and procedures were updated throughout the election, especially because this was our first year of using tabulators. So as the equipment was received and instructions were received from the supplier, our procedures definitely had to be updated. So the following initiatives were implemented as they relate to the identification, removal, and prevention of barriers throughout the election process. So since 2010, the city has been using alternative voting methods, which allows individuals to vote in the comfort of their own home, voting from home facilities, the voting process for people with disabilities who have mobility restrictions is decreased, visual impairments, or who have difficulty with transportation. Additionally, persons who have assistive devices set up in their homes can use them casting a ballot privately and independently. The extending voting period, which has provided convenience and independence with the internet voting from anywhere from October 10th to the 24th of 2022. This was especially appropriate for electors with disabilities because they can vote at a time that was most convenient to them. By allowing persons with disabilities to vote from any location using the internet, there was an increase in the capability for the voter to vote without any assistance. This in turn provides persons with disabilities the same independence and privacy in participating in the election as other voters. For persons with disabilities that required assistance, election officials who swore an oath of secrecy and confidentiality, were available to assist throughout the voting period. Alternatively, people with disabilities were permitted to be accompanied by a support person and/or friend who was administered the oath of secrecy confidentiality by an election official prior to providing such assistance. Magnifying sheets were made available on voting day in order to aid the reading of the paper ballot. Signage was posted in the voting booth using large print to help explain and demonstrate how to mark the ballot correctly. All election information posted to the city's website was fully accessible and available in alternative formats available upon request. Service animals were welcome at the voting place. On-site voting, both paper ballots and internet voting opportunities were provided in all long-term care and retirement homes. And this year, we also provided that assistance at the Pembroke Regional Hospital. For internet voting, we did use the touchscreen laptops. So it was easy to use, and for those with dexterity issues and those not familiar with computers and maneuvering a mouse. Any tables that were utilized as voting booths were at a height required to accommodate a wheelchair and other assistive devices. Staff conducted preliminary site visits at the voting place and carried out an accessibility evaluation using an accessibility checklist that was developed by the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And there's no financial implications to this report.
Questions of council? Councillor Purcell.
Through you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the methods of voting, I know some of the feedback that I received was the inability to use telephone voting. And I see here under the voting methods, it's not broken down for the previous years in regards to the percentages that actually used the phone option to register their vote. Is that something that may be considered maybe going forward, is to reinstate the telephone? Because I know a lot of elderly people had difficulty navigating internet, even as simple as the website was, but they also don't have access to some of those devices, but they do have access to a telephone. So that's just some of the feedback that I had received.
So in regards to telephone voting, in the past, I believe 2 elections, only 8% of our population used telephone voting. And the number one concern following the last election was the use of the telephone voting. We received the highest number of complaints throughout the whole election was over the telephone voting and the cumbersome use of it. So then what happened, the council of the day decided for this election that telephone would not be utilized. But that's something council can revisit in 4 years' time when we look at methods to use for the 2026 election.
Councillor Kale?
Thank you, Madam Clerk, not only for your report, but the running of this election was absolutely outstanding. I know there's always going to be some difficulties and there's always going to be some complaints. In terms of Councillor Purcell's thoughts on the phone, from the few people that I know that tried the phone in the previous election, where I think there were 20 candidates, and you had to sit through and listen to all 20 names, I'm told it was actually a horrendous experience to try and use it. I think, in terms of the advertising, the availability, the making available the Pembroke Public Library for those without internet, I think the city did a fantastic job in making sure that everyone who wanted to vote could vote. And there was a 10-day period to do it in. I can only imagine that if there were some complaints, it might have been people that perhaps waited until the last minute and then got a little jammed. But I think in terms of making voting accessible, I think this is probably a model for frankly other elections as well. So I think we did a fantastic job in this, and that's entirely thanks to the prior councils putting in place the right methods, and then Madam Clerk, you're carrying it out. So I think it was an absolutely fantastic election.
Thank you, Councillor Keel. I'm sure staff will appreciate your positive comments. Next item, Ms. Martin.
So continuing on with the election, this is just an overall report and summary of the election, and I'll try to keep it brief. So as I mentioned previously, the voting period was began at 10 a.m. on Friday, October 14th, and ended at 8 p.m. on the 24th, allowing 10 days of voting. by internet. The voters list, as we're aware, has been a constant complaint by many municipalities. And the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation is responsible for compiling the information from eligible Ontario voters to create our preliminary list of electors. MPAC made some improvements from the last election, but we still had some continued problems with many residents having incomplete or incorrect information, which of course results in additional staff time, the elector having to contact us, fill out paperwork to make the changes. So beginning in 2024, MPAC will transition their preliminary list of electors to Elections Ontario, who will now be responsible for preparing the preliminary list of electors for the 2026 municipal and school board elections. So fingers crossed that we will receive a great list. VoterView is a provider of electronic voting process management software, and the city has used that particular company since 2014. This allows staff to add and delete information on voters as we receive, especially in regards to our death notices. One of the main complaints we've received in the past is a voter letter being mailed to an individual who is deceased. And with our voter list not being up to date, we weren't aware of that information. So the city now continues its subscription to VoterView throughout the 4 years, and staff then can make the changes as required, and it did make a difference. On voting day, we did experience a slowdown in the response time with VoterView. It happened between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. and again between 5 p.m. and 6:45. Staff quickly made modifications to continue with the voting process, and VoterView staff switched to additional backup servers, and they have indicated that they have resolved that issue and should not happen in the future. Alternative voting this year, again, we got together with 7 other municipalities in the area, and we signed a contract with Votes Canada Limited. We had absolutely no issues with this new provider, and the service provided was unbelievable. It was really exemplary for us. The internet voting really is a complement, as you know, to traditional ballot voting, but it does provide additional opportunities and give individuals an opportunity to vote 24 hours a day during that voting period. The paper ballots, we continued to offer that, and 25% of our eligible voters chose to use this voting method. This year, we did take the paper ballots out to our long-term care and retirement homes as well, and the majority of those voters did request the paper ballot. And the best thing we looked at for this year, as far as staff is concerned, was the use of tabulators. The tabulator read and recorded the ballot, how it was marked. It deposited the ballot into the ballot box and produced election results after the close of the voting place within minutes. It was amazing. The system proved to be precise, very easy to use, and capable of generating the final election results very quickly. The work at the voting place was also considerably reduced as the daunting task of manually counting ballots after a really long day was not required, and made a huge difference for staff. So as far as our voting method, we had, as I mentioned, 25% using paper ballots, 75% using the internet, and our voter turnout this year was 35.02%, which is down from previous years. But looking across the province, and due to the fact that we didn't have a mayor's race, that often is the case that your percentage is lower. Age of voters, I've listed, I broke down the age by various groups, but our largest turnout are individuals between the ages of 50 and 59, 70 to 79, 80 to 89, and 90 to 99. Other age groups were also represented, but we definitely do need to target our younger voters. Social media was used throughout the election period. Staff posted regular updates and monitored the social media accounts to direct individuals as required, and the website was also used to share information about the election. Internet voting assistance. Staff provided internet voting and paper ballot assistance to residents in all the senior homes and the hospital. And as required, there were a few individuals that we also provided assistance to in their own home. Staff from throughout the municipality pulled together to assist with this election and continued with also doing their regular day-to-day business. And staff need to be applauded for their dedication and professionalism throughout the election. This is not an easy time because there are so many work demands. The Pembroke Public Library, as was mentioned by Councillor Keel, provided free internet access and at the library throughout the voting period. And a special thank you goes to their library staff for their assistance through the election as well. Financial implications, a budget of $50,000 was budgeted for the 2022 municipal election. Some invoices still remain outstanding. However, staff feel confident that the election hopefully will come in on budget. And at the October 5th, 2021 Finance and Administration Committee meeting, a motion was adopted to initiate and maintain an election reserve beginning with the upcoming 2023 budget. This will eliminate the election causing a fluctuation in the operating budget during the year of the election. And that's my report.
Questions? Councillor Keel.
Were there any anomalies or any problems encountered during the election?
We did have a few concerns that were raised to us, and we dealt with those on a one-to-one basis. In regards to on the final day, the biggest hurdle we had as staff was waiting for the results for our online internet voting from our company. But in speaking with them, they are very, very cautious about their quality assurance, and they wanted to make sure that our results were correct and were our results and not from another municipality. So, you know, you can't fault them with that. And yes, we had to wait an hour to get those results, but they're making changes for the next election, and we'll also know that we won't have our immediate results right away.
If I can make one further comment,
Go ahead.
Your Worship.
Go ahead.
When I looked at your report, and even when I hear that comment, I mean, I don't think it's any concern or anomaly that frankly is out of place. When you only do paper balloting, you end up with complaints that people are standing in line for 20, 30, 45 minutes. Obviously, when you use computers and you use servers, and I did notice in your report, the one slower time with voter view was during lunch, when I'm assuming there was probably high use going on, not just locally, but across the province. And then the other time was the after dinner vote. Taking time to tabulate the hour that it took, which I know for at least 15 of us was probably an excruciating hour, again, pales in comparison to hand counting the ballots, which can take over an hour in large municipal centers. So if those are our only concerns and those are the problems, and we're already hearing feedback that those can be taken care of, I think that just goes to show that that the online voting, the voting tabulators, as much as some people might be critical of them, as much as some people might like to whip conspiracy theories around them, it's just not founded, and quite frankly, it's a positive for our community to get results and to get voters through the voting process as quickly, as efficiently as possible. So thank you for your report.
Thank you, Ms. Martin, and kudos to the staff for their hard work. Next item, Councillor Staff Relations Policy, Mr. Unruh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in accordance with Bill 68, modernizing Ontario's Municipal Legislation Act 2017, every municipality shall pass a council staff relations policy. Along with some of our neighboring municipality partners, Town of Renfrew, Township of Laurentian Valley, Township of Whitewater Region, Township of Edmondson Bromley, the City of Pembroke appointed Tony Fleming from the firm of Cunning, Swan, Carter, Little, and Bonham as the city's Integrity Commissioner and closed meeting investigator. The council's staff relations policy is mandatory and provides guidance on how the City of Pembroke ensures a respectful, tolerant, and harassment-free relationship and workplace between members of council and officers and employees of the municipality. Mr. Fleming has drafted the attached council staff relations policy. I won't go over the details, but it is there for you. If the committee agrees to the adoption of the council staff relations policy, a bylaw will be prepared and brought forward at the January 17th council meeting. There is no a cost associated with it, so the recommendation is that the council staff relation policy is being presented to committee for consideration.
No further need to adopt at this time. It'll be brought back.
Yeah, if the wish of committee is that it brought forward at the January 17th, we'll prepare a bylaw.
Very good. Councillor Fernier?
Just a comment. Not that I'm a regular rule breaker, but I know that I broke one of these rules recently, and it was because something was brought to my attention that was a hazard on my street. So I went to my handy-dandy laptop and sent Mr. Unruh a quick email about the hazard, and it was on a weekend. So I would imagine that certain things that would be considered okay. Was, I believe, on a Friday night? Was it Saturday? Anyway, I'm just saying that I think that sometimes it's okay, as long as you're just trying to get an answer. You're not expecting them to come and fix the problem themselves. It's just, if he couldn't respond, I wouldn't expect him to. But it was just, I was trying to reach out, at that point, because there was a hazard, so. Can you respond to that? Because it says not to direct staff on their time off, and I do that sometimes.
Perhaps the mayor would like to address that, Your Worship?
I'll try and address it this way, is I think in part it's knowing your counterpart, if I can put it that way, in the sense that, so for instance, Mr. Lewis, we have an understanding between us, and I think that's somewhere in the policy, that sometimes you just don't expect you're going to get an answer right away if the staff member is off or what have you. But I know between the two of us, we have an understanding, and now the chair is Councillor Plummer, an understanding that I will send emails, and it will be at different hours and so forth, because it's when I'm thinking of something and it's like, okay, I need to send this off, and if I don't send it off, I won't remember by morning or what have you. But the understanding we have is I'm not looking for an answer, and I don't say that in every email, but I'm not looking for an answer then and there. But what I'm trying to do is, okay, the next time we meet, and there's enough of those emails, the next time we meet, because we do meet at least monthly in terms of the operations department, next time we meet, we need to talk about this, or the next time we meet, we talk about that. But I would suspect if you're talking about potholes or something, I think that's serious enough that it should be going, because it becomes a safety hazard to anyone operating on the streets. But that's the understanding I have with that particular director, because that's who I have previously had a history with. But perhaps the CEO.
Just to follow up, I think I've done this to Mrs. Soriel as well, and I'm the same thing, because a counselor doesn't really have hours. So if someone calls me late at night, or I see someone in the grocery store and they send me something, sometimes I'm emailing staff from the grocery store or immediately, and it doesn't mean, it's just I don't want to forget about it or get home and get on with my own life and then forget about it. So yes, so please be patient. It doesn't mean you have to jump all over the email, but thank you.
Councillor Keel, and we'll have you comment. Councillor Keel?
It's on the same matter, so it might be good for me to jump in. I think Councillor Lafreniere might be respecting 5.1 sub I. And as soon as she mentioned that, I thought, well, I don't think I've done that. And then I recalled sending Colleen Soriel an email at about 2 a.m. on December 20th, because of course my flight to Ottawa was cancelled, and I wanted to know if I could zoom into our 10 a.m. Budget meeting. So I think what I'm getting comfort from the mayor's comments, but I think what I would like to see, because often I'm not dealing with any of this during the day. I mean, I'm not saying that you know, I'm the only person on this council that works. I know that I'm not, but from my perspective, I am dealing with most of my council stuff after 5 p.m. So I would almost like I to be amended to read that we should just not expect a response, as opposed to saying that we shouldn't be sending anything. So that's my, and looking at this whole thing, that was actually the only comment I had in this entire document, because I was thinking, well, you know, am I supposed to take my lunch hour then and catch up on all my emails to staff? And I was like, that's not going to be practical. So that is my only comment on the entire matter.
Mr. Unruh?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, and we'll take that comment back. I'm sure I can work with the clerk and make that change. So just in regards to a couple of the comments there, so we do have the disconnect from workplace policy, which is through provincial legislation or requirement. And we're very fortunate. Our staff is very diligent. And I'm going to have to start slapping their fingers a little bit when they are responding after hours, because they need a life too. What I will do, though, is I did take a note, is that if it is a really health and safety concern, which yours was, is that you should be directing that to the after hours. So, you know, if it is something that it requires immediate attention, the after hours number is the one that you should respond to, because that will give you your action right away. You know, myself and the staff are very diligent. They're not looking at their phone all the time, so they might not catch it. After hours, they'll catch it right away, and they'll direct it. But I'll forward that specific number to you, and then we'll take a look at to put some wording in there in regards to that emails. You know, I'm not the wordsmith person, but yeah, may be sent, but the response might be delayed by staff.
Go ahead, Councillor Keel.
Just for the record, Ms. Sorial did not respond to me at 2 a.m.
No further business before the Finance Admin Committee. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Plummer, Councillor Fernier, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of council to order for January 3rd. I would ask that you please stand for opening prayer and reflection. Before opening this meeting of council, I would ask that those who wish, each in your own way, silently join in a prayer of guidance over these proceedings. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Councillor Keel?
Stemming from the December 20th, 2022 Pembroke City Council meeting, wherein certain members were appointed to committees, I wish to declare a pecuniary interest, this being the first meeting that I'm attending, as I was absent at that one. The brief description of the matter, my sibling Kyle Keel was an applicant for various committees, including at least one with remuneration.
Okay, thank you. So for item B, you're going to abstain from that. This, I take it the approval of those minutes. Is that what you're saying? I'm just asking.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so approval of minutes. I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the regular meeting of council December 13th, 2022 minutes. I have Councillor Giacono, I have Councillor Plummer. Those in favor? That's carried. Great. Next up is I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes, special meeting of council December 20th, 2022. I have Councillor Frenier and I have Councillor Plummer. Those in favor? That's carried. Next, I have the adoption of the minutes from committees. We have one this evening, combined committee, December 13th, 2022. I'd entertain a motion for the adoption of those. I have Councillor Keel and Councillor Purcell. Okay, and those in favor? Okay, thank you. That's carried. Next is we're receiving minutes from the Pembroke Public Library Board, November 17th, 2022. And I'd entertain a motion to receive those minutes. I have Councillor Plummer and Councillor Lafreniere. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Under committee reports, this evening we have a striking committee report. Councillor Plummer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, second Councillor Purcell, the following individuals be appointed to the PBI board as directed for this current term of council ending November 14, 2026. Stacey Taylor, Renee Roblat, Kelly Holland, Jody Suave, Catherine Grant, and Andrew Postula-Watt. Sorry if I've messed up any names, but it's fair.
Thank you, Councillor Plummer. Thank you, Ms. Martin. Your striking committee of council begs to report and recommend from its meeting held this evening, moved by Councillor Plummer and seconded by Councillor Purcell. I got to get used to the signature, that the following individuals be appointed to the PBI Board of Directors for the current term of council ending November 14, 2026. The names already being mentioned by Councillor Plummer. I'd call the question. Those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Frenier?
Just, I'm not sure if this is point of order, but do we not approve the meeting agenda? It was not on the agenda, but do we not approve? Is there not usually a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
I believe you're right. I believe you're right. Okay, well, let's deal with that right now.
So we approve, as per the procedural bylaw, we approve the agenda for our committee meetings, but not for council.
Thank you.
Yes, we called the question on that one. And that was carried, that one. Next up, we have bylaws. First one is 2023-01, a borrowing bylaw. Councillor Giacono.
Your worship, members of council, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Purcell, that bylaw 2023-01, being a bylaw to provide for current borrowing for the city of Pembroke for the year 2023 be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation, waiting your signature.
Moved by Councillor Giacono, seconded by Councillor Purcell, the bylaw 2023-01, a bylaw to provide for current borrowing for the city of Pembroke for the year 2023 be adopted and passed, and further that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Giacono, did you wish to speak to that?
No, your worship, no, I think it's fairly self-conclusive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next, Councillor Giacono, 2023 interim tax levy bylaw.
Thank you. You gave me all the ones. I'm going to take the heat for your worship. Thank you very much. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Purcell, that bylaw 2023-02, a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy for the year 2023 be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation, awaiting your signature, your worship.
Moved by Councillor Giacono, seconded by Councillor Purcell, bylaw 2023-02, a bylaw to provide for interim tax levy for the year 2023 be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Did you wish to speak to this one?
Your worship, just allows us some interim funding to proceed with business.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next up, 2023-03, appointment of a Chief Building and Property Standards Officer, Councillor Keel.
Thank you, your worship. Moved by me, seconded by Troy Purcell, that bylaw 2023-03, a bylaw to appoint a chief building official and property standards officer for the city of Pembroke, be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Moved by Councillor Keel, second by Councillor Purcell, that bylaw 2023-03, a bylaw to appoint a chief building official and property standards officer for the city of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Did you wish to speak to it, or?
Just quickly, your worship, this is a bylaw appointing Paul McLean as the new chief building official of the city of Pembroke. His duties starting imminently, and we welcome him to the city of Pembroke.
Thank you. Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is 2023-05, appointment of municipal bylaw enforcement officers. Councillor Giacono.
Point of order, your worship.
Yes?
Did you want to do 04 first?
Yes. Thank you. I had already crossed it out. That's why. Okay, Councillor Keel, 2023-04, appointment of an interim building inspector.
Thank you, your worship. Moved by me, seconded by Councillor Purcell, that bylaw 2023-04, a bylaw to appoint an interim building inspector for the city of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
By Councillor Keel, second by Councillor Purcell, bylaw 2023-04, a bylaw to appoint an interim building inspector for the city of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Keel.
Your worship, this bylaw appoints Glenn Gordon to be an interim building official during the period of time that Mr. McLean will be getting up and running, and it's recommended that the city council accept it.
Thank you. Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. So Councillor Jacquino, 2023-05, appointment of municipal bylaw enforcement officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of council, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Purcell, that bylaw 2023-05, being a bylaw to appoint municipal bylaw enforcement officers for the city of Pembroke, be adopted and passed, and further that the corporation, that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation, waiting your signature.
Moved by Councillor Jacquino, seconded by Councillor Purcell, that bylaw 2023-05, a bylaw to appoint municipal bylaw enforcement officers for the city of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Did you wish to speak to it, Councillor Jacquino?
We need bylaw people to enforce the bylaws, Your Worship, and this is what this bylaw does. Thank you.
Thank you. Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next items are motions. The first motion is a motion from myself, and so seeing as the Deputy Mayor is not present this evening, I would be calling upon Councillor Jacquino to take the chair.
The council appoints from among its members an acting chair. Point of order, Your Worship, I think we would need to do this by motion, so someone would need to move it and second it.
Okay, so is there a motion to allow?
I would
Moved by Councillor Plummer.
so move that Councillor Jacquino take the chair.
Okay, second by Councillor Lafreniere. Those in favor? Okay, thank you. Councillor Jacquino, if you'd take the chair, please.
Yep.
Your Worship?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a motion by myself, seconded by Councillor Lafreniere, that council supports the mayor's decision not to have a diversity advisory committee for the current term of council.
Motion is on the floor.
If I may speak to the...
Yes, you
to the
may, Your
motion,
Worship.
Mr. Chair. Fellow members of council, my motion simply put is for council to affirm the decision not to have a diversity advisory committee for the current term of council. My reasoning behind bringing this motion is to enable discussion here at the council table and to enable all of council to move forward with the multitude of decisions that council must address this term, starting with the serious decisions that must be made in the context of the 2023 budget. By way of background, the Diversity Advisory Committee was created to provide recommendations to council on matters defined in its terms of reference. That advisory committee made a number of recommendations, including but not limited to the creation of an Indigenous mural, a recommendation regarding the removal of the Margaret de Youville mural, and the review of a draft land acknowledgement. The advisory committee, aided in no small part by staff, conducted a survey, held a town hall, and ultimately recommended to City Council that City Council ought to expend funds on a consultant's report. Council debated and saw fit to expend nearly $10,000 on a report. That report was received by council and staff, directed to review and to come back to council at a future date with results of that review. In the meantime, the city is moving forward. One example is that money has been identified in the 2023 budget to enable items to be actioned. Another example is that the city now has a land acknowledgement that was read earlier this evening. And it is to be read at the beginning of every committee and/or council meeting being held at the commencement of the various committees and/or council. Another example is in respect to the Indigenous mural. The Heritage Murals Committee is now working on this project to ensure that it is advanced to completion, having previously committed to this project. Again, council will need to review funds for this project as we work through the 2023 budget process. That committee has requested that additional money be inserted into a reserve to be used towards the advancement of that particular project. This commitment must be made in order to have that project advance. Further, senior staff are now receiving education on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we heard about that earlier this evening in one of the reports. This too is an important step that is already underway. As a further example of the city's commitment, I reference the annual multicultural event held in the city of Pembroke. It has been held for 7 years now, regardless of COVID. This event is organized by the CEO of the library, staff of the Friends of the Library, and staff of the city of Pembroke. This outstanding event is due to the commitment from the Pembroke Public Library and the city of Pembroke. The city of Pembroke contributed $10,000 in the 2022 budget, as well as staff resources to enable this event to grow and to prosper. In fact, this event was so successful that the library, and by extension the city, has now been shortlisted for the Ontario Public Service Awards for the work on diversity and inclusion, providing a space for all of the community to be proud, express culture, heritage, and identity. Is this not a testament to the commitment by our city? Make no mistake that the city is aware of the importance of inclusion, equity, and diversity. I am aware of the importance of inclusion, equity, and diversity. One only needs to look at the inclusion of the Kitchener Drumming Circle who attended the inaugural meeting. That was done at my request. I understand the importance of working with our Indigenous people. I understand the importance of working with everyone. My expectation is that inclusion, equity, and diversity are part of the fabric of the city of Pembroke, in the DNA, if you will. However, I'm of the opinion that the advisory committee to Pembroke City Council is not required, that the city continues to be mindful of such matters and to continue to work through such matters. The public is always welcome, as I've said countless times before, is always welcome to bring forward ideas to council, and that by doing so, that to make the council as a whole aware and to continue our journey towards diversity and inclusion, because I don't know that we will ever be truly diverse, truly inclusive. It will take, it's a process, if you will. So I'm asking council to support my motion and to allow city council to move forward. Thank you, Mr.
The mayor has brought forward the motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Fernier, discussion? Councillor Keel?
Mr. Chair, I will not be supporting this motion. I find what has happened with this issue in the city of Pembroke to be one of our most embarrassing proceedings in years. We made national news because of one man's decision to not move forward with a diversity committee at a time when this country and around the world there has never been more focus on diversity and inclusion. And while His Worship positively points to specific events and specific actions that are being taken, none of those compare to the movement that needs to happen to work towards a goal of diversity and inclusion that I do believe, with lots of hard work, can happen. His Worship points to us needing to get on with the business of the city and the budget. With all due respect to other members around this table, I can walk and chew gum at the same time. We have done countless work over the last 2 hours. This hasn't hindered us. This hasn't taken away anything. In fact, the mayor's decision to remove the diversity committee has caused us to have to spend time at this council meeting on issues that aren't related to budget and helping the city of Pembroke. A mural, removal of a mural, land acknowledgement, those are certainly concrete recommendations. But the members of the diversity committee themselves, the former chair of the diversity committee in a letter to council, has told us their work is not done. And who are we, frankly, one of the least diverse group of people sitting around a table, to tell them that their work is done? One of the issues with diversity and inclusion is the concept that you don't know what you don't know. And that's not meant to be a negative. It's something for all of us to understand and appreciate, that we might not understand what someone else is going through in their shoes. But we had a committee that can help this council walk down the road. And when we are veering off, when we are doing things that are perhaps not supporting diversity and inclusion, we would have groups of people that could actually guide us in a formal way. His worship talks about the fact that we don't need an official committee to promote diversity and inclusion, that groups, and I heard this from one other councillor after the December meeting, that groups can always come to the city of Pembroke. They can always come and talk with us. Well, then what do we need a Keeping Pembroke Beautiful committee for? Right now, we are telling certain residents in the city of Pembroke, and I'm saying this because they've told me this, that we think flowers are more important than people having rocks thrown at them, people having racial slurs thrown at them from cars while they're walking down the street. I had a client in my office this summer whose white husband bought a house up here in Pembroke. She was a black woman from Toronto. She came up here, and on 2 occasions walking down Pembroke Street in front of the Clarion Hotel, had racist threats thrown at her from moving cars. This committee has not solved all of Pembroke's problems. It has barely scratched the surface of them. And this group, are telling them that they're done. They say they're not done. I don't believe that they're done. I've read the report. The report does not solve all of the issues that we might be having in this city. And the fact that we haven't even resolved to take up the report and are already telling the committee that they're done before we've even concluded what we're getting from the committee tells you that we're acting too fast. His worship talked during a radio interview about, that some of it is city efficiency. That, there's staff time and there's whatnot that goes into these reports. I hope I'm not stealing Councillor Purcell's thunder, but he spoke with the city. The city doesn't even know. They don't have a calculus as to what has gone on into the diversity committee. So we're talking about efficiencies, but we don't even know what the numbers are. I think we need to take a step back. I think we need to listen to the people. This is not the most political city in Ontario. I love politics. But trying to get people engaged in the city, we're a wonderful, quiet sort of bedroom community away from the nation's capital. The fact that you saw the uproar that you did on social media, in person, letters to the editor, we don't see that every day. That should be a sign of the number of people that think this decision is wrong. I mean, when was the last time that this council saw this kind of uproar? Provincial, national media attention. And unfortunately, it was terrible attention. We're talking about trying to recruit doctors and other professionals to Pembroke. And this is what they're seeing on the Toronto News, that we're getting rid of a diversity committee and that it's causing an uproar. If you're a doctor, if you're a professional, don't tell me that you look at that with a grain of salt. You're looking at that news report wondering what in the world are they doing up there? All that I ask for is that we allow this committee to continue, but that their terms of reference, because I agree, we're not going to have a diversity committee forever. I do believe this current one has barely scratched the surface. I would like a report, and again, I've looked at the report. I would like a report that basically says, if we're not going to be continued, if we're only going to get another 2 years, or if we're only going to get another term, this is our recommendations, so that, as the mayor said, and I will agree with him on this, everything the city does should have an eye to it. But I would like to hear from them and work with them on how we're going to make sure that's the case. Is it that staff reports, in addition to having the financial accountability, the financial resource section, has a diversity, inclusion, and action section? Is it that we're in need of hiring a diversity advisor for the city to take complaints? I know at the moment we have closed meeting complaints, we have code of conduct complaints, we have personnel complaints, all going to an outside advisor. Perhaps that's the recommendation that we get from them, is that somebody is looking in on us. All I'm asking for, and I truly mean this, is that we allow them to continue for at least another period of time, possibly not the whole term, that we have them understand that they need to provide us with more permanent recommendations and that we allow them to do it under that context, not the context where I think they had an understanding that they would be continuing on. That's all I'm asking for. And after that period of time, I can tell you, I will not put up the strong opposition that I am now. That's all I'm asking. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Keel. Other members of council? Councillor Lafreniere? Councillor Purcell, you had your hand up. Go ahead, Councillor Lafreniere.
So I only spoke to a few individuals that had expressed their concern. And maybe I am the counselor you're talking about, because I know many groups in the city that the city is not represented at all their meetings. And these groups do recognize certain demographics within our city. Example, Boys and Girls Club. They work with children who maybe don't have the resources that other children do in the city. We don't get involved in the day-to-day workings, but we would support them if they come and made a presentation and made us aware of some programs they're offering. So I did have a discussion with a couple of the people that were upset about these committees not being continued, and I said, continue to meet, by all means. We just can't dedicate staff, resources, and have staff prepare agendas and do reports and do minutes and that type of thing, but continue to meet. If there's issues, come and make a presentation. It's very different than other committees like Keeping Pembroke Beautiful, because staff, the parks, we have to maintain our own city. So yes, we do have volunteers attending our Keeping Pembroke Beautiful meetings, but it does take staff's involvement in a large scope. So these committees are welcome to meet. Come here and make a presentation if they need funding for something, or they want to help, they want us to apply for funding, or there's an issue in the community. Well, we will certainly listen to them. I understand the mayor's position. The other thing about, vandalism and racism, there's no excuse for that. But we do have police services that handle a lot of those problems. We certainly can't police it. We can report those to our police services, and they can take care of it if it is breaking the law. I mean, I don't condone racism or bigotry or anything, whatever you want to call it, but I certainly understand the position that we are going into hard times, staff time is limited, we need to funnel it down, and it doesn't mean they're not important. I sit on 2 other committees that were eliminated too, and we continued to work and plan the concerts that just took place at the seniors' home, even though we were disbanded, because we knew we wanted to do that. So that's all I'm saying, is if they want to continue to meet, I certainly support it. I look forward to seeing recommendations come forward. My opinion.
Purcell.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, something else.
I echo Councillor Keel's comments. Typically, when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, we're talking about people, and we're talking about a welcoming community. We heard tonight from our physician recruiters in terms of the importance in terms of getting people here from other places, right? So that's creating a welcoming environment. They appreciate the work that we're doing in terms of improving our city. You heard that tonight. You heard that from the physician, and you heard that from our new CEO of the PRH. In order to continue the work, what I suggest is that we continue recognizing the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, and we can look at if the issue is in regards to a secretary resource, then why can't we amend the procedural bylaw to allow the work to be still re-recognized by the city and continue the work so that they can provide valuable input into things such as our strategic planning that we have coming up. This stuff doesn't just go away. We have to build a strategy, build a plan. We just started. We just started getting involvement with people that really are passionate about well-being and the care of others. And we need to continue that momentum. We have places like our Empire that are looking at Pembroke and going, wow, you guys are #1. You guys are first class. You guys got it right. we have our partners and other community partners such as in Petawawa doing the same things that we're doing. They're looking at us, looking what good looks like. And then all of a sudden, unilaterally, the mayor makes a decision to strike down the committee without even having any dialogue with the council in regards to what are the priorities going forward for the next 4 or 5 years. And I hear what you're saying in regards to the resources. I requested from both CAOs, outgoing and incoming, the documentation to support how many hours that city staff are spending on these committees. They don't have tracked that information. Is that correct, Mr. Unruh? Through you, Chair?
I am the chair, but I can't answer that question. We could find staff could provide us with that information. Mr. Unruh is new at his position, so I find that a little difficult that you're questioning him, pinning him to the wall when he's only been here a couple of weeks.
Oh, the
So I
question
think
was
we should
posed to
give
Mr.
him, I think
I know,
we,
but the
just a
question was-
minute, you're out of order. I think we should give him a bit of a respite to come back with that information. You're asking the questions, you're armed with the questions, but he's not armed with the information.
Yes, he was. Just a correction in regards to my inquiry. My inquiry was dated well before Christmas in regards to my inquiry, at which time I was told by both the outgoing CAO and the new CAO that this information is not available. So I don't know where the mayor is getting the information in terms of, communicating the level of effort from staff that's required to support one committee. So what I propose, again, is to look at opportunities that we can recognize the committee and the great work that they're doing and limit the resources that we have as a city, if that's the issue, truly is the issue. We can do that through an amendment to our bylaw procedure. If you look at I believe it's the city of Guelph, they have a diversity committee that is recognized by council, but it doesn't have resources available to it from the council. But they can report directly to the council in terms of any issues or concerns or opportunities, so they can build it into their plans and strategies going forward. I think we missed the boat. I think it's unfortunate that it's getting this way. I've got CBC requesting interviews tomorrow, so this is not going away. This is embarrassing for the community. Here we are trying to build solidarity, build a caring community, and we make decisions like that, shooting ourselves in the feet, and not giving us the opportunity to really take advantage of the knowledge that these people have gained over the past few years. I've had the opportunity to speak to the past chair. He's flabbergasted, doesn't understand why this actually occurred. They thought they were getting momentum. The mayor himself, previously, the chair, stated that, hey, we're going to continue this work, And then soon as, after the inaugural meeting, as a surprise to all the councillors, that the committee was struck down without any engagement whatsoever. So what I suggest is that we go back to the drawing board, look at the committee, continue the committee moving forward until such time that we look at the procedural bylaw, amend the procedural bylaw if the issue is in regards to the resources, and allow that great work to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? I'd like to comment, but I'm in the chair. Do you want to take on a vote on who's going to sit here while I say something? Will you allow me to comment from the chair? Thank you. Members of council, I'm not a stranger to racism. My dad was an immigrant. He came to this country after serving 4 years in a slave labor camp along with my mother. They encountered tremendous atrocities, racism to the utmost. And you know what? I received that. I was on the budding end of that line when I was a young boy here in the city of Pembroke. But guess what? I don't get it now. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when I'd go to school in the morning, a bunch of thugs, and I'll call them thugs, they were a little bit bigger than me. I was a little pudgy guy, but I was strong. I would not fight back. I'd come home with a bloody nose, and my dad'd say, "What happened to you? Why is your lunch kit broken?" I said, "Geez, Dad, I don't know, a couple of guys." I knew, but I didn't want to tell them. They were picking on me because I was from a different nationality. My parents were from a different nationality. Guess what? Get that on your cell phone, Mr. Pierce. Are you getting that? I don't see you filming right now. I saw you filming earlier for the CBC. You're more than welcome to. Anyway, what happened was I didn't fight back. And one day, while I was being pummeled, the guy said to me, "Why don't you fight me?" I said, "Because you do not understand who I am." Eventually, what happened? There was some assimilation. I understand that some racism has taken place here. You'll never eradicate racism, ever. It's part of the human psyche, the bad part, the part in your brain that's called the R factor, the reptilian factor, the evil. Evil will always be with you. But what can happen is, we had a diversity committee. They brought some strong, forward-thinking ideas. And I think what they proposed has transpired. And the idea is that they continue. I see you shaking your head. I understand that. Everybody has their opinion. But once you have focused on what you're going to do and produce some positivity, why would you continue to focus on things like, oh God, we haven't fixed racism? The more you hear about racism in your society, investigative reporters from the CBC and wherever love that. They don't want to spin the positive story. They want to spin the story that Pembroke is an awful place to live. Well, I'm sorry, I can't agree with that. And I'm going to have to agree with the mayor. Let's carry on. Why do we have to continue to focus on something that's happened in the past? Why would I continue to focus on something that happened to me 60 years ago when it's transpired? People are advancing, and those among us that are the racists are these people, the little ones, the ones that hide under the rocks, the ones that hide in their basements and get on the internet and spark that sort of inconsistency. And that's why a council like this makes our country a better place, because we can say, yes, that has transpired, and no, perhaps it's done its due diligence. I don't have a problem with that. There's no problem with them coming back and saying, hey, we have some suggestions. You talk about racism, look to larger cities, Toronto, Vancouver, where people are being shot, Ottawa, where people are being shot in the streets. I'm not sure if it's because of their color or their national affiliations, but to me, that's a problem. What we have here is the idea that we can grow, and people such as the chairman of the committee should understand that. Like, do we have to continue into 2096 to defeat this? If you continue to talk about it, you're always going to have it, because all you're doing is you're throwing more gasoline on the fire. Oh, Pembroke has racism. If people don't hear that and the situation is addressed, we'll move forward. But otherwise, what you're going to get is negativity forever. Anyway, that's my spiel. Thank you. Anybody else? Call the Councillor Fernier.
Just one final thing. We are not an island in Pembroke. We're surrounded by the county. And I know that many of the people that reached out to me through email they don't live in the city of Pembroke. So I'm always wondering why the city always has to take the brunt of these controversial issues. And this is controversial, we know that. But many of these people, and many who maybe are sitting in here in the audience tonight, don't live in the city of Pembroke. And although I appreciate that we're all working for one common goal, you know what I mean? Why don't they form a county-wide diversity committee amongst themselves? Because it is a county-wide issue, it's a worldwide issue. So I invite them to maybe get together with their other counterparts. But why is it the city of Pembroke has to always be the one that's the focus? We're not alone in this. And if these people want to go to their own municipal councils and say, we're disappointed, Pembroke's dropped the ball, well, maybe they want to get together with all of them. And that's all I'm saying is we get bad press. And we've done nothing but good. Because this diversity committee did do a lot of good for the city, and we are going to work on it. but it's never a positive. And you know, I hear you saying it, Councillor Jackson. It was the more attention you bring to this, it makes us paints us all with the bad brush, when really all we wanted to do, the previous mayor set up this committee to do good, and it has done good. It addressed the issues that were, you know, of the day. Let's move forward.
Councillor Keel?
I am flabbergasted by the comments I am hearing around this table.
Excuse me,
we don't need
we
that.
have to have order in the committee room. This is not an arena for applause or booing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your story, and I hear it with great regret that you went through that. But in this day and age, Mr. Chair, you don't tell people who are being attacked and punched in the face to take it. You stand in front of them and you take it with them. I can't believe your comment that when you were a kid, you took it. And that's what people should do. You take it until they give up. That is the most horrible comment I have heard tonight. I honestly can't believe that you said that. I honestly can't believe that that's what you're telling people who are sitting in this room and who are watching this and who are going to be reading about this in the news, that when they're getting threats against them, when they're being called slurs, racial, sexual, and others, that they should take it until the other side gives up. I can't believe you said that. I just can't. We at the moment have anti-bullying campaigns in all of our high schools. Diversity and inclusion is something that is being talked about in governments all across the province. Councillor Purcell pointed out that there's now a diversity committee in Arnprior. There's one in Petawawa, and Petawawa had no shortage of bad news on its certain issues dealing with inclusion. The hospital now has a diversity committee. And we're retreating because we're worried that we might never solve this problem. I have no doubt that racism and sexism and all the other isms are never going away, but when you're a leader in a community, you stand in front of it. You don't say, well, there's nothing more we can do. Councillor Lafreniere says that if there's a problem, they can come to us. They did come to us. And they asked for a committee. They asked for official recognition from the city of Pembroke. And now we're taking that away from them because we're saying that they are done. They are not saying that they're done. We're telling them, the council is telling them that they're done. An issue I didn't address before, but that kind of came up through Councillor Purcell's comments, is that the mayor did this without consulting council. In my media release, I think I shared with the entire city, curiously, I might have shared with some councillors, that we have a procedural bylaw that does not give the mayor a royal prerogative to create committees. It does not. It gives council the right. To this day, we're about to vote on confirming the mayor's decision whether or not to not have a diversity committee. We still haven't actually voted on creating committees. We put the cart before the horse. I'm actually wondering what staff at the city of Pembroke took the mayor's decision and actioned it by calling for applications. The procedural bylaw is quite clear. Council creates an advisory committee, and then the staff goes out and seeks applications. That's what the procedural bylaw said. So this is not actually only about diversity. This is also about this very council following its own rules. If nothing else, some people around this table, especially ones that have been here forever, should at least be able to say, yeah, the mayor didn't follow the rule. We didn't follow the rule. We're still not following the rule. All I'm saying, and I know I'm repeating myself, I don't think this is an issue that has gone away. I don't think this is an issue that's going to no longer have any public rolling down the road while we're trying to carry on other work. saying on this committee with this issue, I think we should pause. I think we should take Councillor Purcell's thoughts and say, is there a way for us to make this work? Meeting with the former committee and saying to them, how can we come together? Instead of us saying, we are shutting you down. But if we go forward tonight with this vote and confirm the mayor's actions that went against our procedural bylaw and that are clearly making residents mad, and I honestly don't care if they're all from the city of Pembroke or not. On one hand, we talk about ourselves being the heart of the Ottawa Valley, and then we come here tonight and we rip the heart out of the chest of the human being and say we don't care about everybody else. It doesn't follow. This issue has not been treated properly. Proper consultation has not taken place. All I'm asking for is that we pause and we figure out a way for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee to continue on with its mandate in a way that meets with our resources and meets with our approval.
Thank you, Councillor Keel. Just in response to what you said about some of my comments, I think you misconstrued what I said. I said when I was a young lad, that's what happened to me. I wasn't intimidating that everyone else should have that happen to them. Times have changed, people have progressed, people are more knowledgeable, they're less ignorant. And all I'm saying is if you continue to focus on the negativity and the ignorance of something, then it'll continue to fester within your community. You're an excellent debater. Thank you. Councillor Purcell, and then we're going to bring it to a head.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know how many times I've heard councillors around this table talk about these people. These people. These are family members. These are neighbors. These are brothers, sisters. And we talk about them as these people.
Excuse me, I don't recall anyone here referring to these people. Who are you referring to?
Councillor Pat said these people on numerous occasions. These people. These people.
Go ahead.
Well, I know, Pat, you want to take offense to that, but it just goes to show you in regards to some of the work that we still have to do, even as a council, to understand the sensitivities that are actually happening in our work, in our communities right now. We have workplaces that are establishing these committees as we're dismantling a committee that we just actually kind of just threw together the last term. And just as they start kind of getting some momentum in regards to, you know, activities and starting to implement some of those wonderful things that are going to make a difference, you know, we take the legs out from underneath them. Those people. You know, we have some work to do. And I think, you know, what we need to do is to look at an opportunity, how we can work with the Diversity Steering Committee and see how we can move things forward, look at implementing in terms of our strategic plan that we're going to be building, in terms of identifying priorities that will last a period of time. Because we know we're not going to solve the problem. And we understand that. But you know what? By first of acknowledging that we have a problem is the first thing to do, and to continue standing up for the rights of our citizens and other people, just because of their, you know, just because of what they look like, or their age, or, you know, their class, or gender, or sexual orientation. And here we are, you know, still in a community where people are not treating people the way that they need to be treated so that they can be successful and prosper. And that's all I'm saying is let's give them an opportunity. Let's continue with the Diversity Steering Committee until such time that we look at the terms of reference, identify what those goals are, and then move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no further comment. Yes, final comment, Councillor Lavergne, then we're going to call the
Just
question.
a final comment. I apologize to any of these people that were offended. I mean, these individuals, regardless of what committee was on, I would refer to them the same way probably. Just like the people that sit on the Senior Advisory Committee. the people that sit on the Recreation Advisory Committee. So I use that term because I'm not racist, and I'm not worried that people would be offended because I say these people. To me, that's a term I use. And yes, to me, it does matter if they live in the city of Pembroke. Because if we're expending dollars, or these people come to the city and make a recommendation that's going to affect the city budget, then they should be city ratepayers. So yes, I do believe that if they're in a committee that's going to be making recommendations on how we operate our departments, yeah, I do believe they need to be city ratepayers. So I welcome anyone to open up a regional diversity committee. And I don't dislike Councillor Purcell's concept of rewording and just having them operate, on their own, without the city involved. I don't mind that idea, but I don't even know if we need to do anything. If it's dissolved at this end, they can continue to do that on their own. And like I said, I apologize if how I came out with, because that's the way I speak, and I won't apologize for being mean. But I will say that there was nothing intended, because I am certainly willing to look each one of every one of those people, any one of you. If you want to talk to me anytime, I'm open. I have strong opinions on which committees continue with our participation. That's just the way I feel. There we go.
No further discussion. I'm prepared to call the vote in regards to the mayor's motion on not to reinstate the Diversity Advisory Committee. Councillor Purcell.
I'm actually requesting that we defer the vote, we table the motion to such time that we have full council present. Councillor Abdallah is away, and I think that would be appropriate based on actually the next two motions as well.
Pending the debate that's already taken place, I think that is out of order, so I will be calling the vote.
I challenge the ruling of the chair.
And I will be requesting a recorded vote.
Very good. You want that in the minutes, Mr. Keel, Councillor Keel? The challenge?
Well, I think we have to debate whether you're ruling the motion to table to the next meeting. A motion to table, I do believe, is in order, so I think we would have to debate. We would have to debate your decision.
Mr. Unruh, can you give us an input?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So there really isn't any motion on the floor right now. There is one that motion, or sorry, that one is. The motion to defer didn't get a seconder, and so until it gets a seconder, it doesn't exist. Once it does get a seconder, then it does need to be voted on.
Which takes preference, the motion on the floor at present, or the secondary motion's been brought forward?
The secondary motion to defer takes
To
precedence.
defer, very good. So what we need to do then is, yes, Mr. Councillor Keel?
I would second the motion to table the motion.
Second, we need discussion on that?
Yeah, just, Mr. Chair, yeah, there is no discussion on it. It just goes right directly to a vote.
We go directly to the vote, is what you're telling me?
That's correct.
On the tabling? Correct. But based on all the previous discussion that has taken place on the original motion, is that motion not out of order? Because now we know what the tabling is about. Table says that you will not discuss, but the discussion has taken place. So are we in contravention of the motion?
No, the motion to defer doesn't get discussion. Like the original motion can have discussion, but when there's a motion to defer, it doesn't get discussed. You're not discussing the further motion from that was on the floor previously. You're just not discussing the motion to defer.
I understand that, but what that does is it puts the first motion in a jeopardy of not being discussed or voted on, period.
Yeah, so what happened is that the motion of to defer, or in proper terms, to postpone, then would get voted on, and if it passes, then it would be, the motion would then come forward at the next available meeting. If it gets defeated, then the original motion.
So we are voting on the deferral, correct?
That is correct.
I just want to keep that straight in my mind. Therefore, we are voting on the motion to defer. Those of members of council that wish the motion to defer for a further time, you wanted a recorded vote as well?
Not in terms of the deferral. Not in terms of the deferral?
Okay, we're voting on the deferral. Those who wish to defer at this time. Show of hands. 2. Those against. The motion is defeated. We will now vote on the original motion, which is supporting the mayor's decision not to reinstate the Diversity Advisory Committee. Those in favor of the motion?
Point of order,
Sorry.
just a recorded vote was requested for this. Point of order,
Sorry,
a recorded vote was
excuse
requested.
me. It's been a long evening. Go ahead. Recorded vote, Mr. Unruh.
Councillor Ed Giacono,
In support.
Councillor Ian Keel,
Opposed.
Councillor Pat Lafreniere.
Yay.
Councillor Andrew Plummer,
Yay.
Councillor Troy Purcell,
Opposed.
Mayor Ron Gerva.
Yay.
Motion carries 4-2.
Thank you. We'll go on to the next order of business.
The next motion up is a motion by Councillor Keel freezing honorariums for council of current term.
Your worship, I would seek that we defer this matter to the next council meeting at the request of Deputy Mayor Abdallah.
There's a motion to defer. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Oh, excuse me, point of order.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor is not here. He has to be here to have that statement hold any water. Are you speaking on his behalf in a proxy? I don't believe that's allowed under the Municipal Act. Correct?
I'm not speaking as a proxy. I'm moving that we defer the matter because the deputy mayor's not here and he requested that I defer my motion.
So Councillor Giacono, I have no issue if that's the motion. Is there a seconder for that motion? And we will see if it passes or if it's defeated.
I'll second it.
Councillor Fernier seconding the motion to defer, okay? And as was stated earlier, there's no discussion on it, so I'll call the question. Those in favor of deferring 7B? Okay, so that's carried. So 7B will be deferred until the next meeting of council. Next motion, 7C, is reinstate Diversity Advisory Committee. So as this was just discussed, Councillor Purcell, do you plan on withdrawing that motion or?
I'm going to continue, sorry, Mayor. I'd like to continue with the motion, but again, defer it to, until with council is all present.
Okay, but the difficulty with that, as I see it, and we certainly seem to be honing up on the procedural bylaw this evening. So the matter was just discussed. There was a motion. There was a decision made of council, and as I would interpret would be taking place with 7C is actually a motion to reconsider the decision that was just made moments ago. So that would be my call on that particular matter if someone wishes to challenge me on it.
Mayor, what I'd like to do is actually just kind of reword the motion in regards to recognition by the council, in regards to also changes to the procedural bylaw, allowing recognition for the diversity committee to continue without resources. So it'll be, instead of reinstate, it'll be striking.
So the difficulty is with the notice of motion procedure is so that there is time for not only staff but council to listen, think, and so forth about what was being put forward. So now you're wanting to reword a motion, and I don't think that that's permitted. You brought forward a notice of motion, which was to reinstate the Diversity Advisory Committee, and all I'm saying is that the matter of that was just decided, and it would require a 2/3 vote, and it would have to be a member who voted in favor, which you did not. So I'm saying that, no, 7C will not be proceeding this evening.
Challenge the ruling of the chair.
Mr. CEO, did you wish to comment on this particular matter?
I think I get to state what my challenge is.
But I'd like to know from the CAO as to the matter that was just discussed in respect to the 7C.
Yeah, so my understanding is also similar to your worship in regards to the motion would be a reconsideration of the existing decision that was made of council. And so that would have to be done again by 2/3 majority and would have to be made by an individual that voted in favor of it. So in regards to the motion or the notice of motion and the motion for 7C, I believe it becomes null and void. If you wanted to request a reconsideration at a later date, that he could, but it would have to follow this guidelines. If he wants to do another notice of motion with another motion, then, I guess that could be brought forward. But I think the existing motion 7C as it's worded, I think is null and void.
Certainly, all members of council have the ability to bring a notice of motion and bring forward various different motions at future dates. So, Councillor Keel?
So I disagree with Mr. Unruh. When you reconsider a motion, you reconsider the same motion with the exact same wording. That motion was a motion of support for you, Your Worship, in not actually doing anything. Your Worship did not bring the matter to council to disband the diversity committee or to not create a diversity committee. Your Worship, in fact, took no action at all. And the motion that was before the table was to support your decision to not create a diversity committee. With respect to Mr. Unruh, a motion to actually create a diversity committee has not been considered by this council in any way, shape, or form. So I disagree with the ruling of the chair on that basis. And I think if Mr. Unruh reviews the procedural bylaw, it does say that a reconsideration needs to be the same wording.
Did council wish to take a recess, and we can review it and reconvene in a few moments?
Yeah.
Okay, we will recess for 5 minutes. Thank you for council's indulgence. So as I understand it, Councillor Purcell?
Mr. Mayor, I move to not proceed with this motion at this time. Withdraw this motion at this time.
So that particular 7C is now withdrawn, and as I understand it then, Councillor Keel?
I believe my challenge of the chair is therefore moot.
Okay, thank you. So that ends the discussion this evening in terms of motions. Brings us to notices of motion. Any notices of motion this evening? Seeing none. Any councillor updates this evening? Seeing none.
Oh, just point of order.
Yes.
Sorry, Mayor. Did you skip over the mayor's report?
I did, because it didn't print out on my sheet. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back. It is now winter time. It is now winter time, and there's some ice on the rivers and lakes, and I want to encourage some ice, I say. I want to encourage people to stay off the ice. I recognize that there's those that want to ice fish and engage in what our area has to offer, but I would ask to please stay off the ice at this time. Additionally, we've been receiving our share of winter recently with snow, rain, and all sorts of different types of precipitation. I've been receiving my share of telephone calls. Please respect city vehicles. Please respect that the crews are doing their best, given different inclement weather. Again, please be safe. As previously stated, I am sure that we've all heard of the rise in flu hospitalizations and concerns regarding health care. I would encourage everyone to stay safe, wash your hands, and consider getting the flu shot if you have not done so already. It was my pleasure to attend the Legion's New Year's levee held on January 1st. The Legion is an active organization in our community and deserves much credit for everything that it does. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of speaking with Ben Andrews of CBC about the latest film called Painted Sharks and the fact that it won many awards recently. As many of you will know, this film was directed by Brian Lutz and was filmed in a number of different communities, and it included Pembroke. This film follows the Hallmark film Pride, Prejudice, and Mistletoe that was filmed in 2018. Pembroke is becoming known to be a great location for shooting different movies and for the talent that is right here. I believe a special shout out should go to Cameron Montgomery for all of her efforts at Studio Dreamshare. So it was certainly a great positive conversation with CBC and the great work that is happening here in Pembroke. At our next council meeting, as is custom, council members will be asked to bring forward reports regarding their respective committees. I've already spoken with the CAO and with the CEOs of external boards, such as the Pembroke Public Library, to ask that assistance be provided in the preparation of such reports. In part, this will enable other council members to be acquainted with the work from the prior year. Additionally, this will allow the public to learn about what council members have been doing on their behalf, as the public only sees a fraction of what council members do. So thank you, Mr. Unruh, for that. So I went through 9. Number 10, councillor updates. Was there councillor updates? Councillor Lafreniere.
Yes, speaking of ice, I'm not sure if the mayor wanted to mention the polar dip, if it's happening February 5th. But I want to remind everyone that the Ontario Winter Games are taking place throughout the county of Renfrew, including the city of Pembroke. And I urge you all to get involved. There's lots of volunteer opportunities. The Pembroke Curling Centre will be hosting 3 days of curling here, and it's going to be an exciting time. So go on the website, check out the games where they're taking place throughout the county, as I said, and get involved. So thank you.
Next, Councillor Lafreniere, while you were, I should have grabbed you while you were standing. I understand number 11, closed session, that you have a motion.
I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Troy Purcell, that this meeting become a closed meeting to discuss labor relations or employee negotiations.
Thank you. So we will now move, well, I guess I'll call the question. Those in favor of that motion, and that's carried. We'll now move into a closed session. Thank you.